us by Arbor. We do believe that we're consistent with the plan that we presented with the conceptual development plan. Last month, we did hear from Mr. Kelly. He's here. I've had a meeting with him last week. I talked with him this afternoon as well. His concerns that we're addressing, he's got a storm sewer or a drainage pipe that exists down in this corner down here of the property that we believe goes straight to the ditch. I'm assuring him that we will pick that up in some sort of storm structure, swale or storm structure, depending on the depth of the pipe. It seems to be pretty deep from being out there. And there is an existing tree here too that he would like us to preserve. We do have a tree preservation area along all of the perimeter at 15 feet, and that's shown on the primary plat as well. Really, unless there's any questions, I think that's all I really have for tonight.
Ryan, can I ask if the records indicate that the board did receive the comment letter from Mr. Kelly for our consideration tonight? Does the board have any initial questions of Mr. Isaacs?
Could you go through the planned phases of your development and the timing? And I believe Fishers is going to place a roundabout at the northeast corner of the development, and their construction schedule sort of coincides with yours in some respects?
Yeah, I can answer all of those questions.
We're going to get questions probably about traffic.
Yeah. So the sewer connection point is down at the southern portion of the development. So we'll bring sewer up the ditch, so to speak, to develop sections 1 and 2, 1 being farthest to the north. And that consists of approximately 50 lots in that first phase. And then the yellow is section 2, and then section 3 and 4, and then finish up with section 5 there. And that really kind of coincides well with a dirt balance for the site. This pond will take care of the dirt for 1 and 2. You got a pond here for 3, and then this pond will take care of the balance of the site. So we have met with the city of Fishers and actually have a subsequent meeting scheduled for Thursday with the Hancock County surveyor as well. There is, I believe we show the roundabout on the plans. So that roundabout was provided, those plans were provided to us by Fisher's engineer so that we could coordinate whatever right-of-way needs that they have, as well as drainage needs. So you'll see that there is an open ditch that comes across 96th Street here. Fisher's, as part of the roundabout, will be putting in a box culvert underneath County Road 400, just on the south side of 96th Street. And that's to accommodate all of the surface water that comes from the east. Right now, there's 2 18-inch drainage tiles that run along that area. And the county surveyor has asked that be open ditched at this point. So rather than having just an ugly ditch on the side of the road in front of a neighborhood, we are asking it to be a 2-stage ditch, which means it would have the normal water level in a deeper trough, and then a shallow shelf. So in the high water times, the water would come up in that shelf area. It can be well landscaped. It won't get drowned out. It won't die from having too much flooding. So we think we can make that look more like a river corridor, so to speak, than an Indiana ditch that we typically see around.
Now, is this ditch going to be responsibility once you turn over the HOA for maintenance? Are you planning on doing riprap through there? What are some of the design concepts that you're looking at with that?
So it'll be a county surveyor responsibility. It'll be a legal drain.
Okay,
So we are working with him on the design of it. I think he's agreed with the idea of the concept of the two-stage ditch, right? So so there is a detail of what that ditch would look like, and then our landscape architect will be, choosing the appropriate plantings to make it as good as possible.
yeah, because my concern with that ditch is, this is the entryway into our town, and, one of the big things we talked about at town council meeting was your frontage signage,
Yep.
and so, I want to make sure that we're doing this right the first time, and it's not going to be
Absolutely.
an issue that down the road that we have to deal with. And once you're gone, we're going to have to deal with the county surveys, so,
Right. Yeah, the idea is that the two-stage ditch is really it should be more self-sufficient than the typical old ditch. If you have just a regular ditch, you probably do have to do riprap and other things to keep erosion down. In this case, normal water level is going to go through the ditch, and I think there is a detail with riprap and rock or whatever at the bottom, right? And then once the water stages up, it'll go through the vegetation, so it'll be vegetation that can handle the little more the wet, the little more of the push. The goal is that we don't have any erosion as part of this, so that once it gets established, it'll be more like a river corridor.
Now, this is a town boundary, so the road, the east-west road on the north is Hamilton County's purview, is that correct, Mark? And 400 on the east is Hancock County's purview. Is that county road?
No,
Or
it's
is that ours?
It's ours.
So that's McCordsville's. And as far as the stormwater, there's going to be two authorities, McCordsville Stormwater. I control some of it, and the surveyor controls the ditch part of it. Is that correct? How's
First,
that
let
gonna
me
be split?
elaborate a little bit on the 400. 400 would be ours just where we have annexed through. So it's just going to be the small piece of it.
Just bordering this
directly-
property, and then south
Yes.
of that to the crossing at the railroad will be a Hancock County road.
Correct. As far as the stormwater, it's all the stormwater infrastructure within the development is the towns, and then the ditch would be the county surveyors. So they control that ditch, and that includes the discharge point where our storm sewers tie into that.
That's consistent with any other ditch in town.
Have you requested any variances in the easement from the top of bank on the county ditch? It seems like some of your homes are very close to that ditch, and there's like a 75-foot top of bank easement.
Oh, careful. Let me swear you in.
I think it's maybe in section 5.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, well, give us your name and spell your last
For the
name.
record, Steve Brehob with Banning Engineering, and we've done two-stage ditches at other locations, and as Jonathan talked about, the whole idea is it reduces maintenance and it can look more like a natural channel as opposed to a big, wide legal drain. You are
Good
correct that a
question.
legal drain usually has a 75-foot width across the top. And that's something that we'll be talking to the surveyor about, because typically with that two-stage ditch, that overall width can be reduced. Because the idea with the 75-foot legal drain width is you're going in and you're digging the thing out, and then you're throwing all the spoils off to the side. Well, you're not going to do that, for one, in the two-stage ditch, and two, you're probably not going to throw the spoils off to the side into the neighborhood. So the width is going to, well, we're going to hope you don't do that. So the width is usually 50 feet or in some cases less. But that's something that we'll work with the county surveyor on, is what's the appropriate width for maintenance.
So you haven't asked for a variance yet, but
No.
you're anticipating doing that.
Yes, we're anticipating doing that and anticipating it being granted.
Sure.
So when you do your secondary plat, can you mark on that the extent of the variance and what the variance actually is?
Yes, at the secondary plat, we would show whatever the agreed upon width in that easement
It's almost
is.
a little hard to tell how far the variance is granted. There's one where the easement would actually run up through the corner of a home site if the variance hadn't been granted, but the extent of the variance was not marked on the plat, so it was an area
Yeah.
of confusion.
And if I remember correctly, the width that we have, the easement would come to the edge of the roadway that runs parallel to 96th Street. So it would not cross the roadway and be into one of the lots.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Initial questions? Ryan, you had some comments or staff report?
Just a few comments that, for the most part, have been solidified, I think. So, in our staff report, we denoted the tree conservation area along the south property line needed to be 15 feet wide. Petitioner has since provided a revised plan, which is the one on the screen, which does show that TCA being revised to 15 feet. And then I wanted to call out, I don't know what sheet it's on. The street light shown is right there. That is our standard street light. The petitioner has added a note to the plans at staff's recommendation that would allow them to change that street light in the future, so long as it's shown on a development plan to the plan commission. So, in other words, all we're saying is if they choose an alternative street light, it would still need plan commission approval, but they would not have to come back and amend their primary plat. Because traditionally, you don't even show streetlights on primary plats, right? We're looking at bulk standards with the primary plats. We're making that very clear. They still have to seek approval. They will still have to comply with whatever language is in their PUD ordinance. But if they do change this streetlight and it conforms to the PUD ordinance, and they show it on a development plan, which gets plan commission approval, the primary plat would not have to be amended. And then the last thing that staff had, and we've kind of touched on this already, is just we wanted some discussion tonight on the two-stage ditch for basically the reasons that you guys have already denoted. It's not a primary plat item, but whatever feedback or direction you can give in terms of your expectations for the look, feel, aesthetic of that two-stage ditch, we'd love to hear that tonight so the developer can hear it. And as they move forward over the next few months, developing their development plan and finalizing that two-stage ditch design in conjunction with the review and oversight of Hancock County Surveyor's Office, they know what our expectations are. That would be fantastic.
Ryan, I realize that the surveyor's office has jurisdiction over that area. Do we have any say moving forward in what the look of that, besides what they're suggesting with the two-stage ditch? During that review process, do we have any, or do we want that?
We can certainly go and make comments and make requests, and we've had some initial discussions with Chad about that, and they seem to be open to the idea of some decorative or aesthetic elements like boulders and outcroppings and landscape plantings. Ultimately, it is their decision, but they have been open to those discussions, and they seem supportive of the understanding that the town would like to see that occur here, especially due to the location of this being really the northeastern gateway to our town. So they seem to open to it. It is ultimately their decision. Staff will certainly go and deliver whatever message you would like us to deliver to the surveyor's office. So we're kind of looking for a little bit of direction and a little bit of a public body giving staff some direction, which I think adds a little bit of weight to what we then go and make a request for.
Well, I'm thinking like Greg that this is the entrance to the town, and wouldn't a guardrail be required next to the open part of that ditch to protect from slide-offs on the adjacent road?
I think the ditch itself is going to be far enough away that it would be outside of the clear zone of the roadway and not require a guardrail. I certainly, from an aesthetic standpoint, would not want to see a guardrail.
I was going to say if a guardrail is required, that my personal preference, and I believe the public's preference, would be for a wooden guardrail, if we could get one like is on the trail by 96th and Carroll Road.
Or would that be Fisher's responsibility since when they do the,
Right.
if they wanted that?
If we get input.
Our stormwater ordinance requires some form of barrier if a detention pond is within one right-of-way width from a public roadway. It does not cover a ditch like this, so I think that that decision gets basically pushed off to the county surveyor's office. And they have enforced that in the past where the ditch is directly adjacent to the roadway. I have not had any conversations with the surveyor's office where they were anticipating a guardrail along this.
There is one, it's actually a lake south of 116th Street in Fishers, and there was a slide off there. The barrier was a white rail fence, and the car went through it, and actually a passerby was able to rescue the driver before she drowned. But there was not a guardrail there. It's substantially off of 116th Street. I imagine it exceeds the distance requirements for a guardrail, but it was protected with a fence, and it nearly resulted in fatality. So some protection might come up. If it does, I like the wooden beam guardrails stained, brown or black.
I may be speaking for my client in this instance, but I think that would probably be our preference as well. as
And
opposed to
I'm not sure we
metal
have control
guardrail.
over it,
We can pass that along.
although it's our subdivision, and if we have an ordinance that requires protection and then we don't enforce it and somebody does slide off and get injured in there.
I guess my concern, similar to yours, Ryan, is, when I look at the second example here on the, do I really want just a bunch of grass vegetation, something to break that up in terms of landscaping? Maybe you're right, some boulders or rock formations and even some, more types of trees that are water, willows or those kind of things, something that just breaks up that look a little bit. I think, there does need to be some kind of landscaping made to the survey recommendation. Rock, I don't think it has to be fully rip-wrapped, but I think just something to break up the look that it's just a grass ditch,
And I don't know if you can get it to meander, or if you'd want it to meander, but something that's not just a straight, something that doesn't look like a roadside ditch would be nice.
So I think that's possible. So we had Rivendell going through our process, excuse me, while I find this, a few months back, and of course that project has died. But you can see they had a bit of a meandering with their plan, which I believe the surveyor's office was supporting. So to that point, you can see they kind of denoted some rocks, some outcroppings, trees and shrub plantings, and a meandering of that ditch. So I'm hopeful that if we can deliver this message with the backing of the Plan Commission, that we'll have some support with the surveyor's office to get this done.
Well, I think we were supportive of that plan, so if we could get something that resembled that.
And I would like to add that you'll be able to see this again. We'll be bringing a final construction plan back with fully landscaped details.
For Mr. Isaacs, what are the plans on the trail to go around the stranded parcel there? Or is there an agreement where it can go across the front of it?
There is language in the proposed PUD that says that we will make every commercial acceptable effort to acquire right-of-way to put that trail in. I'll give it better than the college try.
And if not, we're going to go around the back side of it?
We do have an internal trail network that's coming down, and then it's coming through two lots, through the common area and back up to 96th Street. So there is a trail that would get you there. Long term, if we're not successful in being able to acquire right away there, at some point, Fishers is going to expand that road to something beyond the 2 lanes that are out there. They'll have eminent domain opportunity to get the right of way they need. If it's a federal job, sidewalks are guaranteed, I would say. So at that point in time, the sidewalk would go in for sure. So, you know, long term, it'll get there. In the near term, you know, we'll do every effort we can to try to get something there.
Yeah, Fishers typically makes 4-lane boulevards with sidewalks.
Yeah. And as far as the guardrail is concerned, obviously, Fishers is designing the roundabout, and they're gonna have federal standards that they have to meet, since it's a federally funded roundabout, I believe. So if that does become a situation where it has to have a guardrail, I think we need to push hard that it's not an NDOT standard guardrail
Well, you are providing the right-of-way for the
for the roundabout.
southwest corner of the roundabout, so that should give
Yeah.
you some sway.
I would hope so.
Ryan, is there anything else you wanted to add to your report?
I have nothing else to add. Staff is in support of the petition. I want to reference again, you referenced it earlier, but we do have a letter from Mr. Kelly who's here tonight, and we certainly need to open and take any public comment prior to any action.
This does require, as Ryan indicated, does require a public hearing. I would entertain a motion to suspend discussion of this matter so that we could open it up for that public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
There's a first and a second to start the public hearing. If anybody from the public wishes to address, oh, I'm sorry, got ahead of myself.
That's okay.
There's a first and a second to suspend and go to public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Let's try that again. If anybody wishes to make a comment or address this matter before the board, please come before us.
Come on.
Mr. Kelly?
Come on, Mr. Kelly. Let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm, under the penalties of perjury, the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I
Thank
do.
Okay, and if you'll give us your name and spell your last name for the record, please.
John Kelly, Kelly.
Go right ahead, sir.
I appreciate the fact that they've agreed that I own the property east and west of them there, and that the fact that they're going to try to make that drainage from all my property surface draining in down there. Now, John and I both talked about that, and I still don't understand exactly what he's designing, but he said when they got it done, he'd show it to me. But I want a place where, as I have now, I can look down the PVC pipe to my 10-inch drain there, and I can see water running when it's running. We was down there the other day, and we're in a drought, so there wasn't any water running. He agrees that the Shellbar hickory tree that's right close by there, that I know has to be over 80 years, will try to be saved. I would still like to see a 3-foot mound all around the property that I adjoin it on my west and north sides. Now that would be 1/4 mile from 1000 North or 96th Street, and 1/4 mile from 400 West. So that is what I would like to see. I personally do not want a pathway along the front of my property there anywhere that I own. That just brings a nuisance problem to the property owner. The people are trash throwers. So everything else is in the letter that I put there, and they're saying that the mound is not practical for that from their part. Well, there's a lot of mounds around a lot of different subdivisions here. And this would be a quarter of a mile from, like I say, 96th Street, 1000 North, would be a quarter of a mile from 400 West. So that's what I have on my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to come before us, sir?
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
If you'll give us your name and spell your last name.
Mark
please.
Mills. My last name is Mills.
Right answer.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Ryan, can you blow up this section just a little bit? Or that's the property I own, and I spoke at the Rivendell discussions on a number of times. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I couldn't make, or the previous meeting I couldn't make it. My concerns are the same then as they are now, slightly different now. First, because we were talking about drainage, and we'll talk about traffic in a second, specifically some of the dangers. I just want to make sure whatever drainage they're working on, it's best effort, not commercially reasonable. That's just a loophole to get out of something, but best effort to convey it properly north. This area here floods foot deep 3 times in the last 5 years. This area here can flood a foot deep, both at the same time. If that water pushes back my way because of this special ditch or this, I don't deny it might be a better approach, I'm arguing that. I just want to make sure that water won't go backwards or go south. I want to make sure it goes north or doesn't recede or convey or less, is maybe a better way to phrase it. And just some assurance of that, or that was considered before you approve. And the second one is, can you go to the entryway? And this kind of, I think that this also gets to the traffic. It gets to the original Rivendell, where they had to do the same thing. They had issues with how they going to drain up front on 96th Street. These 2 entries are going to be a disaster for traffic. Do you know right now that once a month a semi has to back up? Once a month. I sit on my front porch from 4 to 7, 10 to 15 cars pass other cars. There's been, what, 4 train wrecks? You can't even get over that train track now without somebody running up on you. If you try to do it properly, it's almost like a road rage situation. I'm just bringing this concern to you because the Rivendell one would a modification where you have one come in here and the Rivendell where the Rivendell came in with this, the main entrance, would solve all of those problems. The drainage problem, or the fancy drain, I'm not sure how to describe it. Your guardrail issue, which is going to be a real disaster. I can just tell by the traffic. What's going to happen when you got all these cars and you got a semi backing up? It's going to be just horrible. There's going to be wrecks, death for sure. And then I just want to make sure that the size of these houses have been decreased, if I'm not mistaken, from the Rivendell project. And that's, I think, a big problem for the community. I've invested heavily in this property, landscaped it. To Mr. Kelly's issue, I've started putting trees around it already, so I could both just protect both, to be a good community person. I don't just want it one way, it's a 2-way street, right? So yes, they should be screening the light noise out. That, absolutely. But they shouldn't also downsize the homes so that my property value goes down. I'm 2,200 square foot. I put a 1,500 square foot brand new 2-car garage up. I plan to do some more development. I don't want $300,000 homes sitting around my house. Not that that's a bad thing. Not when across the street they're all 500 and 600 and everything else around Cordsville is. So I'd like a reconsideration to upping the size, changing to one entry into 400, one coming in the east, and properly make sure this drainage is conveyed right. Because I can't handle any more water, first of all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
One question for you. Why are the semis backing up? Is that because of a problem at the CSX tracks?
Because they can't get over it.
They can't get over it. And there's no signage that informs them of that ahead of time?
Yes,
There's plenty of signage.
Yeah, I understand
There's signage.
why
but
they can't get over it.
It's not adequate.
But I want to encourage you to go to the county commissioners meetings, because this is a CSX, Indiana Department of Transportation, Hancock County controlled intersection, and we have no control over it, and it's a problem for us wherever CSX runs through town. We have problems with all those tracks, and I understand the problem there because of the hump. It's almost not navigable in an auto, so.
Yeah, my only pushback there would be the Ohio-Palestine issue is what I'd be up against. Why would I bother? I would say you have the opportunity to control this. You have the opportunity to ask them for some modifications, and that's what my request is today.
We will ask.
And I am the community, and John is the community. We are the neighborhood.
It's a problem.
And you're moving
We
into our
agree.
neighborhood, and we're asking you just to take in our minor stuff, a mound that everybody else does, convey the water properly, and manage the traffic. Those seem like reasonable public requests.
Yeah, I do want to let you know that in the architectural committee, when the proposed homes were reviewed, that the smaller homes, Mr. Isaacs, I think, agreed to remove from his lineup.
Yeah, they're still downsized considerably, 20% or 25%.
Did you have the actual square footage in the two PUDs?
Yeah,
Right.
these homes are smaller. The minimum home size for Helms Mill is smaller than the minimum home size for Rivendell.
Ryan, we're really not discussing that issue tonight, correct?
Right.
That issue was agreed upon a month ago.
Right, and I
But I
apologize,
underst-
but I was here. I'm still bringing it up.
I understand.
And Ryan, one last thing. Do I have to put this in writing, or last time we had trouble with it being captured properly in the notes, the town meeting notes?
You certainly can provide us a letter if you'd like.
Do you capture these?
We do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So,
Ryan, oh, I'm going to go ahead. I have a question for the petitioner, so go ahead and say, I'm sorry.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you give us your name and spell your last
My name is Brett Kelly, Kelly.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, and I understand your comment, all your guys' comment about going to the county commissioners and all that. I understand it. I plan on doing it. We have called and complained, deaf ears. But they did put up 2 signs for us, speed limit signs, which are a joke because nobody obeys them. But as Mark said, after this gets developed, from there to here is McCordsville's. And McCordsville, what are they doing? They're draining two entrances or exits onto that road. And so now that does kind of fall into your guys' problem in a way. I understand from John's point to the tracks, it's still county. And CSX and the state highway has that. But you guys, town of McCordsville, is contributing to that by dumping them in there. And so that's why like myself and Mark had talked about, Rivendell can throw an entrance in there off of 96th Street. And to say Rivendell, that was a beautiful entrance, that they had proposed. Very nice. I don't see why they couldn't do it. And then, 2, or another issue is that drainage. It doesn't take very much to put a manhole there. I mean, you know, for that drain, the swell and all that stuff, it goes to a pond. It goes to a pond clear back over here and stuff. And that ditch, I'd say it's probably, I want to say maybe 48 inches deep, maybe, in that general area. You know, so how's that swell gonna swell or whatever you want to call it, gonna flow down to the pond? You know, so that those are just some issues that I just think about all the time. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Well, before I ask the petitioner, Mark, quick question, because one of the things I am concerned about is this development potentially flooding the farmland. I mean, this is a workable agricultural area, and we don't want the neighborhood causing an issue for that. What kind of drainage study has been done, or has there been?
It hasn't been done yet. We're still early in this process. But the requirements that the town has in place means that we will address all those as they go through their development plan. They're required to prepare a drainage study, and then that gets reviewed, and we look at addressing all their comments. Mr. Kelly's comment about the tile, locating that in a structure, I'm absolutely positive we can do that as long as we can get it located on the survey. We locate it, we can require them to place a structure where that comes in so that we can have access to that. So that's not an issue. The drainage, I'm not sure if I followed the comment, but I thought I heard drainage going out onto 400. Just to be clear, everything from 400 is draining towards the west.
Okay.
So, and all that gets routed through their detention. Even everything on that area of the 40 acres, the Kelly 40 acres in that L-shaped notch, most of that drains to the west. And so the developer would be taking that off-site water and routing it through their development. So there won't be additional water shed to the south in any fashion. Basically, everything that's coming off the field east of 400 West hitting their development will get routed through their storm sewer. And same thing with anything coming off the Kelly 40 acres going to the west will get routed through.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any additional water at all shed on them.
If you have additional comment, you'll need to come up to the mic.
You're already sworn in, but just so, because they keep it on recording, just give us your name again, Mr. Mills.
Mark Mills,
Right.
M-I-L-L-S.
Right.
Mark, the way you described it is that you will be doing this study?
Yes, it has not
It has
occurred
to be
yet.
done.
They have to do it.
You have to do it, right?
Yes, it's required.
And one of the things, we're on septics here, of course, and in the Rivendell project, of course, the houses were coming around here. And there was going to be septic capability hooked up, which then took some of that a little bit off of the table. And then there was going to be, I won't call it a manhole, but there was a drainage hole here for proper draining all of this. And so I just want to restate, when you do that study, that's going to include all of this, or it's just going to include this north?
That 40-acre piece that's notched out is, they'll accept the drainage or the water from that area, but they will not include improvements on that area. So they
Right, but if
wouldn't.
the study shows that it'll be detrimental, then what?
It would not. You're draining, most of that's draining to the west. So they're taking your water, not shedding water onto you.
Well, it comes this way off of the road, right? So if they push more water that way.
They're not
pushing water.
pushing water that way.
It all
Yeah.
goes
It's
west.
all
So-
going west.
All right, so you're saying that Isle won't have more water
Correct.
because of this?
You will, most likely you'll have less water.
That's-
Now, it's hard to quantify because you're getting water off of that field east of 400 West. A lot of that water is going to route through Helms Mill, and as they take water, some of that water will shift north. But you're still going to get some water off of that field to the east.
And nothing from this new ditch that's gonna go in?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's not gonna drain backwards?
Nope.
Or south?
No, it's going to go west. They're going to extend the existing ditch, and then all their detention is going to tie into that ditch, and all that ditch flows west and south, and then that ultimately goes back north into Hamilton County.
All right. If you feel comfortable in that, I accept that.
Sure.
For now, will this be discussed again?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll talk process here in a minute. So, but Mark, could you give us the 30-second overview of pre and post development release rates and how generally new
Oh.
development greatly decreases the amount of release in a project?
Yeah, just the development, the requirements in our ordinances basically give a controlled release rate that the developer has to do. So they have to detain in their ponds and release at that rate, which is it's a fairly slow rate. So what ends up happening is they collect all that water, come through, stages up in their pond, and then it gets released over a couple days from a storm event. So right now, the water just, it goes where it goes. And when it hits, it just routes through low spots and surface flows and flows through tile. So this is going to be a dramatic difference from what you're seeing today. So when a development goes through, on the overall, it's a dramatic improvement of what the existing conditions are. These guys are not directly adjacent to you, so I can't guarantee how much it's going to impact you, but they're going to greatly improve drainage around their development site.
So they're gonna hook up all the existing tiles that are in those fields now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't-
Sir,
We-
sir, if you have a question or comment, you need to come up.
Do you swear or affirm, under the penalties of perjury, the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you'll give us your name and spell your last name, please.
Brian Kelly, Kelly. I guess my question is, because there's several ditches right in through here that flow this way. I own down here. And they're gonna hook up everything that's there to keep the water flowing.
When you say ditches, did you mean tiles?
Ditches,
I'm sorry?
tile ditches.
Tile ditches. So what the developer's required to do, and generally this happens with most developments, is they put in some sort of perimeter swale, and that's anticipated to try to intercept any off-site water that's coming into their site. The more we know about the tiles, the more we can locate those, the more we can guarantee they'll get connected in. Wherever those tiles go through that development, they're going to be crushed fairly early in the development just with earth-moving equipment going across. So what we have to do is intercept those tiles and tie them into their storm sewer plan.
But they're gonna hook them all up.
That is the plan. The only thing I can't guarantee is if we have a tile that we didn't know about, it's not located beforehand, and it's not discovered during the installation. That would be the only way we'd have a tile that wouldn't be connected.
So the more information adjacent property owners can provide us and the developer about where tiles are located at, the better chance we have of not missing any. Okay.
All right, so there was one other concern, and this was brought up at town council, and this, by the way, this letter was also read into the record at town council. And so if the petitioner could come back up, I do have one concern. I want to make sure that we're,
Do you want to close the public hearing before, or, it's okay, it doesn't matter whichever way you want to do it.
it was asked in the public hearing, so I figured
Okay.
we'd get an answer in the public. So All right, so now I have a better understanding who lives where and what. You did mention at the town council meeting that you felt that, this is farmland, we want to keep the residents off the farmland. And you were hesitant with the mounting and kind of understand why, but what kind of steps are you guys taking to mark the territory, per se? Because
So-
you have like one side here, section 211, butts right up to the property line, and where there's some common area that has some separation.
Yeah, so obviously, we have common area along almost all of the perimeter. So therefore, the residents that move in there, they don't own to the common property line.
Right.
They're gonna own, further back. We can take a look at lot 211 and see if we can get common area, in there. These, without knowing what the width of these lots are, we might be able to skinny them down and create that common area there. So that's really the extent of what the feeling is there. In this case, a 40-acre farm field, there's not much impact. There's no impact to an adjacent resident that's right here,
Right.
where you would try to do some kind of screening or whatever. I mean, ultimately, Mr. Kelly's property was part of this project at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I would say at some point in time, it could become, developed, certainly once the sewer becomes available there, whether it's an extension from us, if we work out a deal, or if, another developer were to come in and strike a deal with Mr. Kelly. At that point, that buffer yard that's being requested is more impactful to that development now, because now, now these people don't have to provide the same thing that these people did and whatnot. So-
Well, that's, my point is, normally a mounting is used for shield the light or noise or visual aspect, right? This is open farm field, but at the same time, I understand where the residents concerned, or the owner is concerned of, having people, in a sense, trespassing on their property
Yeah.
and there. So, didn't know if there was any discussion of fencing, tree line, along there, just on the common area to kind of make a natural
Yeah, we can
property
definitely,
line kind of look.
we can definitely take landscaping under advisement and look at that, and that's something I can bring back at the council.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's got to be something. I don't
Something to create a
understand
visual
necessarily why a
barrier.
mound would need to be there, just because you're really not shielding anything from, I don't think the corn or soybeans really care about the light, but if there was property, or if there was a farmhouse close by or something like that, I could understand the need for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you heard all the discussion about drainage. When we're at this level, I hate to commit to a mound that is gonna cause us heartburn later.
Right.
So, with the amount of surface drainage that's coming across, not everything that is coming onto us is coming through a drainage tile. Some of it is surface drainage coming across the property line that we have to pick up. So, without being able to regrade property we don't own, that becomes problematic. So, but we certainly can look at, creating a softening of a barrier if there is an existing tree line down here. This is a very unique situation for me, because I've never had a farm field that was owned by a different person that was not separated by a windrow or an old farm fence, or something that had a visual barrier that was already there. These farms have been really farmed together. So there's no opportunity for, any vegetation to grow between these, farm fields.
I'll add into that comment that just from a drainage perspective, the mound would cause a lot of difficulties with that. We're going to basically get sheet flow off of that field, and if we had a swale that ran along that property line, it could intercept that water, and it also gives us the opportunity to locate tiles and plan structures so we can intercept those. The other thing too is, we've had a lot of discussions about allowing residents to have fences in their yard and to push easements as much as we can into common areas. That is an opportunity right there with the homes along that line to push that rear yard swale you typically see into that common area. And if we had any kind of barrier across there, I think we need to make sure that we've got enough space to allow for that drainage to be shifted off those lots if fences are
Right.
a strong desire.
Well, I
Right.
think definitely for a lot of those homeowners, it would be a strong desire, right? So the more we can allow that.
A swale is probably as good of a separator as a fence, especially if it's got water in it. I had one other question with regard to the traffic. I was thinking about this farm field that was part of Rivendell but isn't part of Helms Mills. And as that develops, where the traffic's going to go, and call them exits 1 and 2 onto 400. And then I was looking over at section 5. If that north-south road there's like 10 lots on the end that sort of curve off, and then there's a stub street out to the west up by 1000.
Right.
Did you ever look at straightening that and making an entrance there onto 1000?
Yeah, that entrance would want to be right there.
So you did look at that and decide to curve them to the west?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, Rivendell had that same design that way, and I think that was the reason why you could not get there. Also, there's an entrance gonna be right here, in the last section of Arbor's development.
So actually, the road running through section 5 there is actually going to exit to the north. So not all of the traffic's gonna go out exits 1 and
Yeah.
2.
By the time the two neighborhoods are fully developed, some of these people are gonna be able to go out to 96th Street.
So the ones that want to go east on 96th Street from sections 3 and 5 and a future development that perhaps stubs in on the southeast there could all go out to the north.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
of
I
that.
definitely could see that if this were to develop with this stub street, that's a pretty good shot to get you up and out to 96th
It is,
Street,
yeah.
in the future.
So not all the traffic dumps onto 400.
Today it does, because that's the
Well,
only
from
access
1 and
point, but
2
long-term,
it does,
Correct.
until the stub out to the west, to the
Yeah.
northwest comes to fruition, it does.
And the more traffic that you see on 400, the less people are gonna wanna go that direction. I think you're gonna get stuck on that railroad track once for 20 minutes. Not sure how often you're gonna wanna do that. It's not a shortcut any longer. So, people's driving habits will come into play too on how traffic is going, to work. We visualize with the roundabout there, in the future, people are gonna want to use 96th Street to get out, or 1000 to get east or west.
So I know there are, I think, two things that we've not addressed a lot with the traffic and the lot sizes, and both of those items are really not primary plat items, right? So this petition will be back at the town council on November 14th for a second reading, and for those folks that spoke tonight regarding traffic or lots, home size, or anything else, that would be the opportunity to address the town council at the rezone stage, to have those comments heard and considered. So,
What date was that?
November 14th.
I don't think we've officially closed the public hearing. We have two more comments, it looks like, from the public, and then we're going to close the public hearing. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, if you come up to the microphone, please. And give us your name again, Mr. Kelly, please, so we know who's speaking.
John Kelly, Kelly.
Go ahead.
John, Isaac and I were out here on my property. We come out here and looked at where the the ditch is, and he took a GPS thing of that. Now, all along this, there are no fences. All along this, there are no fences. Now, this entire 37 acres here is pattern ditch, 40 inches, 40 feet. Every 40 feet, there's a ditch which comes down to this end. They're all carried to this 10-inch tile over here that I have under Foss's place, which is Heaven's Pond or whatever, Heaven's Mill, Eden's Mill. So, like I said, all this water comes to this point. If it's up here, it's still brought back to that point, and then it goes straight over to B Camp ditch there at the turn. There's a corner in the ditch over there. And when they put that ditch in, they went to the bottom of B Camp, started their ditching machine there, and then come back over to my property line to attach all that. But a lot of it was already in there at that time. So I just want to make sure that there's no there. That's the reason I'd like to have the mound there, because it's not hard to see a quarter of a mile, even though I'm blind in one eye and can't see out of the other. Right. So,
Thank you,
thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Kelly,
sir.
once again, just give us your name. You're still under oath.
Brett Kelly.
Okay.
This ditch up here that you're proposing, how deep
We're
are,
not proposing.
or talking about?
Fishers is proposing.
Okay, do you know, does anybody know about the depth of that? Because the only reason I'm saying is, you know that there's two big culverts that run along that,
Yeah.
that they put in about, what, a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's why I was just wondering, how deep is that gonna be? And two, you know, would it really need that guardrail there? Because I can't see that really being that deep.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just, I'm curious.
The depth of the ditch is gonna be established by the depth of the drainage culvert that Fishers is putting in underneath County Road 400. We do have an elevation of that, and actually, I think we've asked them to lower like half a foot, or something like that, but that's not a big deal. That was to make sure that the ditch will function. So they were looking at that, but other than that,
Yeah, because I remember when they put that in, you know, and
Yeah.
and to put an open.
so those pipes that were put in are staying.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're staying.
I can't
This-
see you
this-
pulling them out.
This ditch will be next to that drainage pipe that comes out of.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
other thing too is this ditch is proposed to be a two-stage ditch. So what you see on B Camp right now is, it's a fairly defined ditch. And what they mean by a two-stage ditch is that it's going to come up a short distance and then have a long, flat slope that comes away from that, that allows that ditch to, during low flows, it stays within the defined area. During high flows, it spreads out over a wider area. So it's not going to be the deep defined ditch that you see right now.
I think there's a cross section.
There it is. Not that we can see that. I still can't read it. Can anybody else see it?
Yeah, the two.
Lower left.
I would just look at the lower
Zoom in
left.
on that, right
Yeah.
where it says ditch cross.
Scroll down.
Yeah, zoom that area.
Scroll down to the pictures. Pictures are better.
Oh, pictures, okay.
Yeah.
Scroll to your
To the
right.
left.
Yeah, scroll, nope, that way.
There we go.
Or that.
There you go.
The picture of it to the right illustrates it.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
That's it.
That's an
Is that an
example.
example?
That's an example of one that Banning recently designed and recently was constructed.
Oh, well, then you need a guardrail.
Maybe. All right.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a first and second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have a motion to resume discussion on this matter?
I move we resume the Plan Commission meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Ryan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I really don't. Again, I mentioned the two items we had in staff report we've addressed, discussed tonight. I think I have gotten clear direction from the Plan Commission regarding the two-stage ditch design elements. So staff feels that it has what it needed to, and staff would recommend approval of the primary plat contingent upon zoning approval from the town council.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve, contingent approval contingent on town council approval of the rezone of the M.I. Helms
Second.
plat.
Greg has made a motion. Dr. Bernie has seconded that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan, I think we're ready for some new business tonight. Looks like the first item under new business is PC-23-016.
All right. All right. Primary plat for Culvers, which is seeking to build on this lot. This is essentially the northwest corner of Broadway and Mount Comfort Road. Our line here is a little bit off. This site actually stops right here at this alley. So essentially the primary plat encompasses everything from this line eastward to Mount Comfort Road. And we'll talk about it later, but obviously the three different right-of-ways that are in the middle of this property will be requested to be vacated, and we can talk more about that. Zoning is neighborhood commercial and is proposed to stay that way. The petitioner has been through quite a bit of process already. They have gone through the BZA and received a special exception, a number of variances to make this site work for them. Staff referenced a number of those things in our staff report, and we're happy to go into any more detail that you have. The primary plat, actually, I misspoke. The primary plat does encompass this entire site. My apologies. Culver's Restaurant only encompasses these three smaller lots. My apologies for that. So, total primary plat covers about 3 acres. The Culver site is about 2.3 acres. Right now, we are at the primary plat stage for this. We have both items on the petition tonight. So staff's kind of giving the presentation for both. We do need to act on them separately. So the first thing that we'll need to do after discussion is to open a public hearing for the primary plat, take any public comment, and then close that public hearing, and then vote on the primary plat. And then we can go into the discussion on the development plan and have some discussion on that. That does not require a public hearing. Staff does have a few comments, just one comment on the primary plat, and then a number of comments on the development plan. We'll hold those for after the petitioner's presentation, and we'll be happy to go through those. So I think Joe is presenting. Joe, what do you prefer up on the screen?
Let's do the plat first, and I'll run through that.
While he's doing that, let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You'll give us your name and spell your last name, please.
Thank you. My name is Joe Calderon, Calderon. I'm an attorney in Indy with an office address of 11 South Meridian Street. I represent Jim Swan as principal and a Culver's franchisee who is bringing these two items to you this evening. The first should go fairly quickly as it is a primary plat to allow for essentially a replat of the original town plat. if you will. So, literally. So we're consolidating some of the old lots, which still have kind of paper right-of-way associated with them. And last week we introduced, or there was an ordinance to vacate. This is Ohio Street and these two alleys that will no longer exist for purposes of the proposed development. So we're proposing 2 lots on 3 acres. Culver's will be the larger lot at 2.24 acres, and then lot 2 is about 0.70 acres. This is all zoned properly. We've worked through essentially all the issues. The one waiver we do have is a reduction for half right-of-way along Broadway from 60 to 50 feet. But I think with our sidewalk plan and everything else, that should be hopefully acceptable to the Plan Commission. Otherwise, I think we've addressed most everything, or will address everything that is outstanding on the plat. I know that Ryan had asked to make sure that we had the appropriate dedicated right-of-way for Railroad Street, which I think this plan does. Maybe not all the way to the west line. Is there just a little more segment to go?
Well, I think Railroad Street Driveway is fine. What Mark and I were gonna state was just making it clear where the right-of-way's at would be helpful. On
Okay,
plat.
the existing right-of-way. Okay, no, not a problem. We're not objecting to any final comments that staff has with respect to the primary plat. So, with that, we will also create a separate exhibit and legal descriptions for each of the vacated rights-of-way that you see on the plat. Again, this would be for 2 lots that's zoned properly, and we agree with the couple of conditions that your staff has put into its report. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course, this is public, so I suppose you have to open it up, see who's here.
Any additional questions from the board?
On that dry detention area, if that does fill with water, how's it get out? Does it just sit there until it absorbs? It's like
No, it'll,
a French drain? Or?
yeah, that'll be probably more a discussion for the development plan, but just to kind of short circuit that, that will, first of all, we have to make sure that we satisfy Mark's issues regarding capacity of the sewer that it will flow into. Assuming we do that, then it would be, just as was discussed in the last hearing, released at a rate that's slower than what it is today. It should stay dry most of the time. I'm not sure what level event that will have any water that lasts any significant period of time.
So it does have a storm sewer drain.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I think there's been discussion between our engineer and Mark regarding under drains, and I think they've planned for some concrete flumes underneath as well. So it will all be captured and then drained out at the appropriate release rates. Assuming that there's appropriate capacity going into the public sewer, which is being coordinated through your engineer.
Does that go into the culvert that goes under the CSX track slightly to the west, Mark? Is that where that goes?
This is kind of a big discussion point.
Yeah.
Literally, it's a great question because there's been a lot of go back and forth between Mark and the developer's engineer. I think if we could touch on that during the development plan discussion, it would be helpful. That's digging into the details, which we need to do with the development plan. So if we could maybe focus on the primary plat and come back to the development plan stuff.
So I move we suspend the Plan Commission and open the public hearing on the primary plat for the Swan property.
Second. There's a first and a second to suspend the Plan Commission meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to come before us and make a comment on the matter? Ryan, can you make a note in the minutes that no one was present or no one wished to make a comment?
I'll make a
I move
motion
we-
to close the public hearing.
Second?
There's a first and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries.
I move we resume the Plan Commission meeting.
Second.
There is a first and a second to resume the Plan Commission meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other questions or discussion topics from the board or from Ryan?
I have just two, and then I don't know if Mark has anything. I think Joe and I and staff agree that if we could get the existing right-of-ways just a bit more defined, as well as the proposed right-of-ways on the plat moving forward, that's something that can be added post tonight. That'd be great just for future. In the future, we'll develop a secondary plat based upon this primary plat. So it'd be nice just to have that put to bed. And then second, the developer is requesting a waiver of the subdivision control ordinance for half-width right-of-way along West Broadway Street. Staff is in full support of that waiver request. You don't see a lot of these. It's kind of more of a rare thing that we do, but it makes a lot of sense in this particular location. We have a site with 3 road frontages that does not have much depth. It has been a challenging site for anyone to develop for a number of years. That's why the biggest intersection in town is undeveloped. In addition, West Broadway is not our roadway. We've had discussions with NDOT over the years. They have no plans to widen West Broadway, and in fact have not requested any additional right-of-way from us. So as we looked at how to get this project to work, it really requires the reduction of the proposed thoroughfare plan right-of-way from 60 feet to 50 feet. And the developers agreed, and it's shown on their plans, a really, I think, great way to offset some of that reduction is by taking the sidewalk and placing it outside of the right-of-way line, leaving what's remaining of that right-of-way fully available for any future road improvements, if there ever are any. So, again, staff is in full support. That is something that should be motioned on separately from the primary plat, but we are in favor of it.
I'll make a motion to approve the Culver's primary plat.
Second?
And the reduction in the right-of-way, that needs to be in there as well.
Contingent on the reduction of the right-of-way.
Second?
There is a first and the second for approval of this petition. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, what do you need, a motion to waive the subdivision control ordinance? I'll make a motion to waive the subdivision control ordinance.
There's a motion. Do I have a second?
Just, let's say waive it, write a waiver of the subdivision control ordinance to reduce the right-of-way for West Broadway from 60 feet to 50 feet.
So moved.
Second?
There's a first and a second on this motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, development plan. Joe?
Okay.
You're still under oath.
Thank you again. Joe Calderon, 11 South Meridian, Indianapolis, representing Jim Swan and his entity, Westfield Development. So, Ryan, is this the most recent site plan? Or there was one that was sent late this afternoon, and
Not the one that's set. I can grab that for you. Give me 1 second. We got to save our network, but we've not made that photo. There you go.
thank you. So there were some conversations running late into the afternoon, mostly between our engineer, development engineer, which is Y Engineers, and then Mark, and then Ryan was copied on everything as well. So there probably will be some discussion points, but here's the simple way to explain this site plan is that this is pretty close to having everything that you need to see this evening And we think that the open items can really be more worked out with staff. At least we hope so, and that you agree with that. We presented this idea in kind of a rougher format going back last spring and summer to the BZA, with a Culver's restaurant. It has a drive-through component, and we had to work through a special exception, and then there were some development standard variances that went along, and there were like 25 conditions for the overall development to work. It's complicated, as Ryan mentioned, because we're dealing with access issues, and this reflects a full access, kind of shoved towards the south end. We agreed that we can't move it any closer that way. This will be shared with Lot 2, which you just saw. Then we'll have right in, right out only on Broadway, and that still needs apparently a little more work between our engineer and Mark. I think the last comment on that access point is that this is commonly known as a pork chop, and Mark wanted it a little harder to make it more difficult to turn left on Mount Comfort. So this is supposed to be landscaped, I think, but those are the access points. The restaurant flow wraps around. We have, I think, 77 parking spaces, and have worked through really most of the site layout issues, and we appeared before Architectural Review Committee tonight. I was not present at that meeting, but our architect and I think owner's representative was here, so hopefully that went well. Do you want to show the elevations of the building real quick? So this will kind of give you the idea of, it's really pretty much four-sided architecture. Obviously, we have three frontages that we have to manage, and we think we've done a good design with all sides. There will be high-quality materials, including stone veneer on that. So again, the Architectural Review Committee reviewed that earlier this evening. We did submit an updated landscaping plan late this afternoon that added some trees and shrubs, I believe, with Ryan's comments. But we know that staff will have some comments to you this evening, and I suppose at this point I want to elicit your feedback just to kind of better be able to better understand any concerns that you may have that we can answer for you this evening. So I'll stop at this moment and allow you to question either myself or staff about any open issues or concerns that you may have.
Any initial questions from the board? Hey Ryan, I'd be interested to know just the exit onto Broadway, where that lines up with like the turn lanes and stuff at that light.
Yeah, we can pull up an aerial and kind of show you about where it's at, but to help you out, you see this curb line right here? That is Hannah Street, correct, Mark?
Yes.
So if I pull up aerials here, that'll give you a good idea of where we're at. So there's Hannah Street right there.
This is basically taking away the alley entrance, is that right? Pretty close?
Pretty close. Yeah, it's sitting.
Maybe a little bit more west?
Yeah, it's sitting right about here, I think. Right about there, I think, is where it's sitting.
Okay.
So Mark can go into the details, but what we anticipate, what we've discussed with NDOT doing is essentially extending that existing left turn, that east or north, how you want to describe it, turn lane, extending it back further, restriping the lanes. There is appropriate asphalt width existing today. extending it back so that essentially that left turn lane services both this entrance and Mount Comfort Road.
Okay.
That's actually one of the comments that Mark still has is, we understand it's NDOT's role to approve that, but we've discussed it with NDOT, we've discussed it, we'd like to see the drawings that we approve include that so that we know we have coordinated it properly. If NDOT changes its mind later, we can't affect that. They can do that. That's their rights, their jurisdiction. But we'd like to encapsulate on our set of plans what we approve as being what was discussed between the town and NDOT months and months and months ago when we agreed to the location.
Brian, stop me if this is not the right place to discuss this, but is there any way to make that northern right lane, right turn lane only until you get maybe past the vet's office there? I mean, I'm talking where it starts before Family Express, making that a right turn lane, and only until you get to past the vets, both east of Mount Comfort and then west of Mount Comfort.
I'm not following you.
We had multiple discussions with NDOT on how best to kind of service this site, and one of those discussions was adding a right turn lane.
Heading westbound.
Yeah, if we were having discussions of right in, right out at that location. We've talked about quite a few different variations.
You know what I'm saying? Because really, once you get to Family Express, everything, it comes from one lane, opens up to 2 lanes. So now you got 2 lane traffic working, going all the way down Broadway West. Does it make sense to limit the flow of traffic and making that only a right turn lane onto Mount Comfort at Family Express, and then continue that until a certain point west of the Culvers?
The answer for that from our discussions with NDOT is no.
Okay.
We had discussed some variation of that, but not actually eliminating the through travel lane. NDOT still feels it's important to have those 2 lanes, especially through that intersection.
Because now you're not crossing in a sense, 2 lanes of traffic. Make a left-hand turn.
That would affect the performance of that signal.
Okay.
So that's why that's kind of important. But we had discussions along the lines, your point. But ultimately, we decided on the location where those entrances are shown today. And we kind of felt like that is the best solution for the site. The only other variation that we liked close to that was some further sliding of that intersection a little bit further west. But that was the only other variation. But we looked at other alternatives.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark, when we ultimately address grade separation at the tracks, is this going to infringe on the space that will be needed for that project?
Yes, there's going to be a couple different impacts along Mount Comfort Road, how our future projects are going to impact. Right now, we've got a intersection project that is in design with construction to be in 2025, 2026 in that window, and it widens Mount Comfort Road essentially from a 2-lane section to a 4-lane travel section with additional right and left turns. So it'll be 6 lanes through that section, and that does include a median. So in the short term, that pork chop that they've got shown there for a right in, right out, in essence, that's a measure that's essentially going to be temporary as far as the pork chop, because when we widen, we're going to take out that pork chop to put added lanes in there. We're going to add another travel lane, but we're also going to add a median in there, so the pork chop will be unnecessary.
So on that pork chop, let me ask you this. Is it possible, especially going to the southbound, make it more of a wishbone? And what I mean by that is actually have a curve that kind of so that you can't kind of go, but make it at 5, 6, 7 feet. I don't know where you can. It totally makes you have to go southbound.
There's quite a few variations on right-in, right-outs. There's no standard design. I can tell you that design, one of the reasons why I still have that comment is still outstanding is because it's so easy for someone to still turn left there.
But if you have a curb that forces you,
Yep, and there's variations of that, so we're definitely going to have some more discussions. Basically, this is the second variation of the pork chop that they've submitted, and I've kicked both of those back, saying that they're not
I mean,
sufficient.
my preference would be something like that
Yep.
not, I wouldn't say encourages you to go right, but
Forces
forces you to go right.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
And that would be what I would really promote, because that is a highly traveled area, and it's going to be frustrating for somebody who goes, well, I live over here in Villages Brookside, I'd like to, it's more convenient. Well, but it's also very dangerous, and we have that there for a reason. So, I mean, I would definitely take that back to your client and say, listen, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's the right end I'm concerned about needing.
No.
But I would
It's the
definitely say
out.
the out has to have something that
Yep.
mandates you going to the right.
Yeah.
Yep, 100% agree with that.
Yeah, Mark made that clear as of 5:54 this evening. So, I get it. It's on record, and we'll have to fix that to satisfy Mark.
Well, and I'd just say to
Yeah.
satisfy town council. too.
Exactly.
And to Mark's point, 2025 will be doing, in Dr. Bernie's, we're going to be doing an upgrade, grade level there at that intersection. That alleviates it, but temporarily, we need
Right.
to make sure that people understand the direction we need them to go.
Yeah, we're gonna have to satisfy your concerns for
I
a
mean-
year and a half, 2 years. So,
Appreciate it.
yeah.
Otherwise, I like the layout, and the design.
Any other questions or comments?
Do you want to get into the
Dr.
drain?
Burney had a question earlier about drainage.
Yes. As I delve into this, I was going to say I still have several outstanding comments on this. And there's 5 major points, I think, that are kind of important. 3 of them are transportation related, and we've kind of already touched on 2 of them. And then the other 2 are drainage related. The developer is, the site itself, I don't have any issue with the storm development, the storm sewer that they proposed, but they have an outlet that ties into an existing storm sewer that runs along Mount Comfort Road. That line runs south all the way to the ditch that is just north of the park and the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the existing line that runs through there. The developer has had these discussions with me kind of since the beginning of this development. Would I allow them to tie into that? Because currently their site sits in a little bit of a hole, and it does not drain through that storm sewer. So this is shifting that drainage into that. So it's not existing drainage into that storm sewer. So my condition is I'm actually willing to do that if they can show that that storm sewer has capacity for what's existing plus their added flow. That has not happened to date. That's still not part of their drainage study. So that's something that I think I've made very clear now. that
What's
they-
the alternative, Mark?
The alternative is to run a storm sewer that goes south and west over to the same ditch, but where it crosses basically along the CSX tracks, south and west. So
And how much difference in cost to the developer? Because I'm sure that's a concern.
that's really the driving factor on
Easements
what it is.
from private owners
Yeah.
or,
They have to, well, you can see just the length, they'd have to take that pond and have an outlet that runs south and west across their site, and then,
2 or 3 more sites.
yes.
That's a couple
adjacent
hundred feet.
Properties. More than that, actually. It's probably something, I'm not even positive what it is now. Somewhere between 500 and 1,000 feet, probably, somewhere in that neighborhood. We can probably pull it off, but it's significantly more expensive. So they have that existing storm sewer there. If they can justify capacity in it, then
Well, what's feeding into that sewer, stormwater right now?
it's basically just road infrastructure.
Okay, so it's the drainage off of Mount Comfort draining into that and down
Yeah.
into the ditch.
Yep.
So with their retention pond, and how much impact, would you estimate or guess that would have?
I think that they're adding something in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 CFS into that, but right now the engineer has not provided an estimation on what's running through that storm line right now and modeling for it. So it's not difficult to do, but it just hasn't happened yet. So we should find out.
Parcel in the past been known to be a whole lot of water.
No, it's not. Matter of fact, it was there were some areas of that was half to 3/4 blocked. We had it cleaned out just I want to say a few years ago when the Towns project went through that intersection.
Mhm.
So we made some alterations to the storm sewer through that. So that's when we discovered it was in poor shape and that the state was not maintaining it. So
what have you been given a time frame by their engineer of when they're going to have that to you?
I have not.
Okay.
Do we know what kind of pipe that is?
It's RCP. It's concrete. It was installed in, I want to say sometime in, I used to know, but now I want to say it's 1996 somewhere.
So it's not an old terracotta pipe.
No. It was part, in the 90s, the county did a project, improved Mount Comfort Road, and it went, that storm sewer was installed with that project. So this goes way back before I was here, and but it is not end of service life or anything like that. That thing has capacity, and the question is there sufficient capacity for their discharge? And I think it's a fairly straightforward process to do this. I've been asking for it for a while.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer. I'm just trying to make sure the flow of information is getting passed back and forth. So I know that our engineer submitted a drainage report, received comments in time for TAC, which was 2 weeks ago, essentially redid it and still needs some work. So they did respond pretty quickly after TAC to get an update, but the update did not include apparently the capacity for the storm sewer on Mount Comfort. I think the engineer made an assumption that, the site had previously been developed and with a lot of impervious surface, and we're going to reduce that flow. But I think Mark's saying, I think you need to show that you can actually push this water east and then south versus
Well, assumptions
west.
get very
Yeah.
expensive in the future.
Assumptions, yeah. So Mark made it very clear this evening that we have to talk to A&F to get the town specs for what it's doing, and then with the 2025 project, then we do capacity calculations, including our flows. So pretty crystal clear to me. It was not trained as an engineer as to what to do, so we appreciate your comments and certainly Mark's, and, you know, I'll make sure that, you know, we get that taken care of.
The other drainage comment that's still outstanding is just having to do with the dry detention that they have. We require under drains, under dry detention, and that is intended to help with maintenance. Essentially, when you have dry detention, one of the issues that comes up is that it's a wet area, and you will get cattails and other things growing in that
Right.
It's probably not the aesthetic that you want. So we have that in our stormwater technical manual for the requirements for dry detention is to include under drains. So, and that hasn't been addressed. So we're still working on that. With the intent is to just make sure that we can maintain that in an aesthetic pleasing manner, since it is very front and center.
I think, Joe, correct us if we're wrong, but what we've heard from Y is that in order to put under drains in it, it's gonna require some significant grade changes to the site. So I think that's been the pushback from Y, or probably the franchisee, is why they're showing the concrete flumes instead.
Yeah.
So that's a discussion point, really, I think, at this point for the plan commission is what do you want to see in terms of dry detention design?
Well, I mean, if flumes would be fine as long as there is something that we have a commitment from the franchisee that you know, someone will maintain. I agree with you guys. I don't want to see cattails as a pull in. I don't want to see like a little miniature pond with all the reeds, and we don't want that.
You know, we don't want to see water lilies.
Yeah.
We want to see, you know, some sort of natural looking vegetation in there, and what springs up naturally in a wet but not totally ponded area is not always very aesthetic. Just witness what's in front of our sewer headquarters here.
I mean,
What's the problem? The under drain would drop another 8 to 12 inches deep. They can't make that work. The flume depth is the bottom depth they can make work. Is that the?
That was the one of the responses that I gotten back here this past week and a half ago or something like that. That was the response. I have not actually seen the numbers to say that that's accurate.
That's their argument.
That's
It's graded surface drainage to a flume.
Yeah.
It would, if graded properly, would prevent it from being wet. Not as good as under drains.
Not as good as under drains, and what's your the value you would get with under drains is you can get that the bottom of that dry detention dry enough that you can get in and maintain it.
Yeah.
So if you put in it's essentially a concrete swale that goes across there, so that low flows. The intent is that low flows stay within the channel,
Right.
and then they flow straight across and don't wet the area. But in practice, I have not seen that work very well. So I'm not enthusiastic about it. It helps if you've got the developer promising to maintain, but you just need a clear understanding that he's going to hire a landscaping contractor that's going to come in, and they're not going to be maintaining an area that's wet. So they won't be able to mow it like they would if it had an under drain. So if that is clear, then
So there's a potential to get grass in there?
the
could be mowed.
expectation is that you'd have grass in there.
I suppose that would be the most advantageous thing rather than, you know,
And it's- The concern is, of course, if it doesn't have under drains, it will be too wet too often to mow every week, and then you start getting other stuff growing in there.
Yeah, otherwise you get willows and sweet gums and water locusts and so on.
It would eventually dry as soon as you have the dry period, and then someone can mow it. It's just the ongoing maintenance of it, that you're gonna see periods where it can't be mowed.
You know, those flumes drain to a drain and gravity out of the, is that what that does? Where's the flume terminated to a drain?
Yeah, it goes to it's essentially goes across to an outlet control structure
Right,
that limits the flow out of that pond.
right.
And then from that structure there on the east side, it goes and discharges into the storm sewer that's on Mount Comfort. The limitation with the site is that storm sewer, it's already at a fixed elevation.
Right, it either works or doesn't work.
And they sit in a little bit in a hole as it is right now, so they have to raise it up to some extent. And in order to make it work well, you need to raise it up a little more.
Right, but still maintain the volume of the dry detention.
Yes.
Math problem there that's.
Yeah.
It's solvable. I mean,
It's-
it's just math, it's not an opinion, so it's gonna prove it works or doesn't work. So. But obviously extreme preference is under drains. If the math problem doesn't work, you have to go to something else, make a concession to make the development work, basically.
Yeah, and that's,
That's where we're at.
yeah, I was gonna say,
But you don't,
Yeah.
we don't know the math problem. I mean, we aren't sure it's been proved.
not sure it's been proved. I know that they're limited on the elevation they have, and what they're getting into is, you get a little bit into an earthwork problem.
Yep.
In order to make the underdrain work, the underdrain isn't like it just goes just below. You need to have,
Yeah, there's some depth and
Yeah.
gravel and all.
you want to have 18 inches of cover over the top of that thing to make sure that it's protected and it's going to serve long-term. So if you imagine, you've got to raise that pond 18 inches up from what it is right now.
Still
And-
maintain banks and maintain volume.
Yeah, and you can get into a spot where you have to raise the whole site 18 inches, and then your cost for that
Yeah.
starts to become prohibitive.
Yeah.
Too much.
So their preference obviously is flume, but I think, I mean, if the math, like to Chad's point, if the math works and they can prove it, I think, and we have some form of maintenance agreement in place, I can tolerate that. I can live with that. If the math obviously doesn't work, then that takes away their option, and I think underdrain's the only way they can go. Are we okay with that, or is
I think so, and what I'm hearing, and we'll encapsulate all this later, but what I'm hearing is if they can't make underdrains work, then the town staff is able to accept the flumes, but that there needs to be some sort of maintenance agreement worked out between staff and the developer that give us a comfort level that it's gonna look nice. So for instance, years ago, when we first installed what's out front, it actually did look nice. And because there was certain herbicides and fertilizers that you're supposed to add to that and maintenance that you're supposed to do, and we've not done that. So that's why it looks like it does today. So there's ways of maintaining those, and if the under doesn't work, staff would then go about negotiating something that would be maintainable and would look nice long term.
We're happy to do that. Work on that.
We had one developer that actually considered an underground stormwater storage tank under their building that they would then pump out of from time to time as it became necessary.
Yeah, we're paying more for that extra ground. Probably. It's,
Well,
there's
it's
yeah,
underneath.
understood.
any other concerns
Yeah.
by staff?
There's probably a minor issue, but I've already pointed it out to the developer. I asked that he extend South Railroad Street to their west property line, and they have shown that.
Okay.
The concern that I have is, just pointed out, it may end up squeezing their site when they get this dialed in. If you notice, there's a slight jog in that. I don't think that there is space to jog it because it's against the CSX embankment.
Yeah.
And so this all happened late. So I still have that comment and on my list and want to make sure that they ultimately address this in a fashion that
You're talking to the
CSX
north
is-
boundary
yeah,
up there?
yeah, that CSX is going to let us install.
CSX not gonna let us do anything.
They're going to have a, yeah, that's my concern with that.
Yeah.
So if that is a problem, what'll end up happening is it might squeeze their site some, and I don't know what the other implications are of that. But they just showed this just today, so this was our first real look at it. And I have not had a chance other than to email back to the engineer, Bill Terry, just to say, I don't know that that works because of just the location. He has not responded to me, so I don't know if he just drew it in just today to address that, or if he is sure that that is where the existing pavement lies and that they're able to modify that. So.
Okay.
I have a few items, minor, I think more minor than Mark's items. My stuff, as you probably can imagine, is more generally aesthetic in nature. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, there is going to be a retaining wall that's going to be incredibly visible on this site. So that dry detention basin that we just talked about, the west end of it is a retaining wall up against the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to this picture,
Is
obviously.
that Westfield?
I think it is, I'm not sure. Similar to this one, ours won't be wet like this one is, but the retaining wall would be similar. What staff has suggested is some sort of a stamped and colored concrete wall instead of just natural concrete wall, smooth. And wanted to get Plan Commission's sort of direction on that. I talked with Jim about it a few weeks ago. He didn't seem to be overly concerned about doing so. It's just not noted on the plans that way.
How many feet are
Tall?
no
Length?
length roughly?
That's a great question.
Probably similar to that.
Scott, well, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 150 feet
Okay.
ish.
Well, I mean, it's going to be viewable from Mount Comfort.
It's gonna be.
Yeah. And you don't want to. I'd be okay with that.
Joe, are you guys comfortable with the stamped and colored to that retaining wall?
We'll have to if it's a Plan Commission condition, yeah.
How tall is it, right? I can't see the elevation.
I do not know that. Mark, you have to know that off the top of your head.
I want to say it's 4 or 5 feet, but I'd have to look at the plans to be certain on that. It's not.
Does he have it in his notes? H6?
Could be. I wonder if it's over there. I can't read any of that. Can anybody else?
It didn't have the height, it just
Elevation on it? Okay.
refer to structural plans in detail. It might be in the CD set.
Yeah.
You know, does that retaining wall have to be concrete? Couldn't we drive in steel pilings that interlock and then build a more decorative timber wall in front of it? The steel pilings would do the retaining. They're fairly inexpensive to put in with a vibratory hammer on an excavator. And the folks that do this around here are located in Fortville, and they do it with building seawalls on Geist. They even will retain water, and they put them in lakes and build a wall, and then they can work behind them and push the lake out from their site. So that could do the retaining, and then you could tether any type of keystone block wall you wanted to the front of it that would just be decorative. It'd probably be way less expensive than trying to do stamped concrete on a vertical.
Surface, yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, anything that was decorative in nature, staff
Yeah,
would be
I'm
comfortable.
more decorative than it would be a plain flat concrete. Yeah. So.
We'll say decorative retaining wall, leave
Yeah.
it open to some interpretation.
Yep.
Okay,
That wall height is 4.1 feet.
Yeah, for those steel pilings to be driven down, you just can't have bedrock under there. I don't think there is. I think we have like 60 feet of glacial, like, we have like 60 feet of till or something on top of the limestone, don't we?
really minor thing, and I just normally would probably just approve this, but since we're here discussing it, the BZA's motions actually asked for this pork chop to be landscaped. That could probably, you know, again, it all comes down to the design and how large that pork chop is. This one, as shown, probably is not large enough to maintain much landscaping. If it becomes more dramatic and larger, maybe so. But any opposition to if staff feels it's not going to be maintainable, to approving it with concrete instead of landscaping.
Well, I'm concerned about obstructing views of the oncoming traffic for turning right there.
It would be very, very low landscaping,
Yeah.
Well,
below
So-
18 inches.
Dwarfs.
If you adopt it, Ryan, will you adopt it, maintain it?
like I said, I'm more concerned about,
Personally,
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about restricting
View.
the left turn. So, I mean, if it's not feasible, but the key to the wishbone, the pork chop is not to make it look pretty, it's to make
Functional.
functional. So, yeah, thank you. So let's focus on that.
Okay, and the remaining items that I have are lighting plan related. So the light plan that we received on October 9th was missing some information. So it did not include, did not denote any street lights, which our code does require along both Mount Comfort and Broadway. Didn't include a detail for those street lights, which we have provided. And then there's some additional detail on the internal parking lot lighting that we did not have. So we would just seek simply, if you sought to approve this tonight, which staff is in support of, just giving staff the ability to follow up and get those items in compliance with our code prior to signing off on the development plan. And then I would just denote that what staff is requesting in terms of streetlights is the same street light that we intend to use on Mount Comfort Road in front of Town Center, which is not the 30-foot poles that we've used elsewhere for that downtown area, which we've kind of viewed as from 750 to the railroad tracks, going with a more standard, like 18-foot tall light, the same light that we're going to use in McCourt Square, essentially. It's a tech light feature. It's pedestrian scaled, and that's the reason why we would select to go with it. Is this is downtown, it's going to be more of a walkable area. A pedestrian scaled light makes more sense from a streetscape perspective than a 30-foot pole with the mast arm on it. So that is all that I have.
On the streetlights, I want to see some ratings on the luminaires too. They will be LEDs, I imagine, and there's a bug rating. The B is for a backlight or uplight. The U is essentially a 0 is a full cutoff, which is kind of dark sky compliant, if you will. It doesn't go up, in other words. And the G is glare. I think glare is very important because it's the harshness of the fixture. And older people can't see well in glare along roads, especially if it's wet. If they are coming down with an eye disease like Fuchs corneal dystrophy, or they're coming down with glaucoma or cataracts and they don't know it yet, and you throw something up there with a G greater than 2, they're not going to be able to see, especially if it rains, and we're going to have a lot of accidents because of that. So I think we want to get, reasonable ratings on the luminaries.
Do your town center lights,
This is not in our code as yet, but
It's not in
this
our
is
code.
a busy intersection.
Not in our code yet. I suspect that these tech lights would meet those requirements, but we'll need to go through
View
that
it, yeah.
and see.
Yeah, you can get any kind of LED really you want on top of the pole. And I think they sell them with all the different ratings.
okay.
So I might suggest, if I could, that any motion of approval tonight include the following conditions: that a more, for lack of a better term, dramatic pork chop be utilized, that the restriping of Broadway is included on the plans, that the pipe capacity is either proven or the drainage goes to the southwest, that under drains are provided in the dry detention, or a maintenance agreement is agreed to for the dry detention basin, that there's a decorative nature added to the retaining wall, and that a lighting plan that complies with staff's request and the ordinance is included.
Make a motion to approve as presented by Ryan Crum with those conditions.
There's a motion of approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Really appreciate it. We were running out of time on our contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion. Ryan, looks like the next item under new business is Fritz Engineering,
Yes.
request for approval of development plan.
They have waited patiently. We appreciate it.
Did we need to do anything on the building elevations there?
I'm sorry?
Did we need to do anything on the building elevations on Culvers?
No, the ARC took care of that earlier tonight.
Okay. They did.
So, locations of 7419 North 600 West. This is along the east side of Mount Comfort Road between Greenfield Bank and the new dentist, so just south of 750. And it's basically in front of the multi-tenant center with the United States Postal Service in it. This is a proposed neighborhood commercial zoning, and the proposal is for a multi-tenant building. It's got the Qdoba moniker because Qdoba is looking to take about half the building, a little bit less than half the building, but it is a multi-tenant retail building that will eventually have other users in the space as well. It's total of about 5,400 square feet. The BZA has reviewed this item and granted a special exception for a pickup window and a number of variances, which we're happy to detail if need be. And then 2 points of ingress egress, one there along the east-west internal drive and one along the north-south internal drive. Those locations were something that was discussed early with staff and that we agreed were the best locations to ensure that any stacking or any traffic that would ever occur would not funnel itself out onto Mount Comfort Road. So same process we went through with Culvers, minus there's no need for a primary plat as the Courteville Corner Shops was primary platted years ago. So that was ruled for final action tonight, and I will turn it over to Ashton presenting for the petitioner.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You give us your name and spell your last name.
Yes. Ashton Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z, with Fritz Engineering. Yeah, Ryan did a pretty good job summarizing this. It's Lot 2 in the McCordsville Shops Commercial Subdivision. It's just under an acre. I think, in fact, it's 0.99 acres. It's a multi-tenant commercial center, approximately 5,400 square feet. Currently, we're expecting 3 tenants, Qdoba and maybe 2 others. There's a potential that if Qdoba were ever not to be there, that space could be split up into maybe 4 total. But currently, this is Qdoba's driving this, so they're taking, like Ryan said, just under half of the overall space. Drive pickup window only. It's not an ordering station. It's just if you order it online or on your mobile app, you come and pick it up when it's ready. 34 parking spaces on site. As Ryan mentioned, we've been to the BZA, had a number of mostly setback related variances. There were some platted setbacks when the plat was originally done that conflicted with the current zoning and the overlay district, and as well as some other improvements that have been done on this property, including the multi-use path that's along the west side of the property. It's actually on the property, located within an easement, and lining it up and the parking up with the development to the north, which is the dentist's office. And we're showing that little stub on the north side there for future connection if that were ever to happen to their parking lot for access through. We did work extensively with staff on the vehicular entrances, went through a couple iterations, got these two, which I think work well for the site and work well for overall traffic internal to the commercial subdivision. And yeah, that's about all I have. It did go to the ARC. I wasn't there, but I hear it went well and all was good there in the architectural. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Brian, I was just going to ask, like, on the building elevations that are listed on the agenda, I know on the BZA we talked about the signage above the doors on the east elevation. Like, did that get changed at all? I just don't see it here.
It's not, it's just not shown.
Okay.
So it will be there. I turned it upside down, sorry. There we go. So there will, or there was approval granted by the BZA to allow some signage over each of these 3 doors, small 6 square foot signs, just to kind of help people understand where they're at in relation to the front of the building. So as tenants fill those spaces and they submit sign permits, we would then approve them as long as they're contingent with those conditions of approval.
Yeah, and that is the east side of the building. It's, for all intents and purposes, the back side of the building, but we don't really have a back side because we have drives off and a public road on the west side. So yeah, that was just to identify the various tenants in the building if you're internal to the development.
You're going to have an outdoor eating area in the front?
There is a proposed patio in the southwest corner of the building.
I'm asking about coverings over the tables. Those will probably be umbrellas?
I don't know that we have an answer.
As opposed to an overhead awning that's supported by pole?
Correct, yeah. There is no overhead awning over the patio proposed.
I just don't want to have flying umbrellas. It's quite windy coming across Mount Comfort Road from time to time. We get, you know, straight line winds and storms, 60, 70 miles an hour, and the umbrellas will go flying if they aren't tethered somehow into some type of footing.
Yeah, a base for them, yeah. Sure.
You don't see the need, or there's no potential for the northern part of this to be some form of other food establishment would need pickup or drive-through windows? Is there enough expansion room in case that was ever something?
If one of those other tenant spaces sought that, they would have to go to the BZA and go through the process to get that approved, where we'd have to look at whether parking's available and appropriate and how the circulation would work, because I would be concerned with circulation with a second window.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the sanitary is not set up with the infrastructure necessary for a restaurant in that space either. So if one was desired, there'd be some significant changes that have to be made.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So do you need a motion?
Any other questions from the board? If not, I would entertain a motion, unless, Ryan, you have anything else to add?
I do not.
Make a motion to approve the development plan for Fritz Engineering.
Second.
There's a first and a second for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, it looks like the next item is Haven Pond streetlight request.
Yeah, they have withdrawn that request. So just to give you a little background, we have had some discussions regarding streetlight requests recently at the council level. And staff has agreed that anytime anyone requests an alternative streetlight, that they would bring that to the Plan Commission and request that. So Haven Ponds approached us with that request. We explained what we needed from them in terms of their the data and specs on the streetlight, asked them to provide that, and they then withdrew their request. So they will be going with the town standard streetlight, which was the original streetlight shown on their plans, their development plans from whenever they came before us, which I don't remember when, it was quite a while ago. So it does probably mean, my guess is that that development will be without streetlights for quite some time, because if they're ordering from King Luminaire, it's gonna take them a while to get them here. But that's okay, they have incidental bonds that they can float until that is installed, and then we can sign off on it, so.
Okay.
It's not I don't believe this needs any kind of a withdrawal acceptance. This was not it's not a formal agenda item, so we can just move on.
Okay. And then, is that all under new business? I think that's it.
We are back to the zoning ordinance. I know everyone's super excited to go through 10 pages of zoning ordinance amendments. Sorry, I guess I won't find that funny. So I will go through this quickly. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see it better, because I can't see it. All right, so this amendment really started with a direction from the council to look at make an assessment of our fee schedule. And so we began to do that, and you're gonna see the very last thing we talk about is some increases to our fee schedule. And Eric Pullum, our building commissioners here, who will be able to go through that and give some detail as to why we're increasing what. But one of the first things we noticed when we started to do that analysis is that we have a whole lot of items that are noted in our fee schedule, such as a replat, plat vacation, right-of-way vacation. I'm not gonna read the whole list. All the red type in there is new. Now, we're just not listed as a petition or a permit in our zoning ordinance, and there should be the same headings should be in the fee schedule as the zoning ordinance. So we're just basically all the different types of petitions and permits that we've had for years that we've been charging fees for and going through a process for really probably should have been listed in our zoning ordinance, and we're adding that in now. So that's simple, same thing, we're just listing impact fees, listing the fact that we have inspection fees and they are payable via the fee schedule. So we're just doing some cleanup stuff. The second item here, application materials, is discussing how you pay the fees. Thank you, sir. How you pay the fees. For instance, you used to have to bring a check into the offices and pay on paper, and now we invoice through iWork and you pay most of the time virtually. So we're just making some tweaks to that to make it align with our current processes. Next up, section 402 there at the top of the page. This is in regards to temporary structures. So all this language that's in white is part of our existing ordinance, and I believe this language has been in our ordinance since it was adopted in 2011. But it allowed for someone to request a temporary structure for up to 120 days, which just seems a bit long to us for a temporary structure. Now, we originally were going to propose to bring that down to 75 days. State law actually dictates 90. And generally, it's frowned upon to be more restrictive than state law. So, in some cases, it's forbidden.
Prohibited, yes, in some respects.
So, we're revising it to the 90 days, but we are including a statement in it that says, or as listed on the permit, whichever is less. So, for instance, the grill always does a St. Patty's Day party every year. They put a tent up. That doesn't need to be up for 90 days. Most likely, Robert's gonna list a 3 or 4 day permit time, and that's what we're gonna approve it for, and then it comes down after that. So we're just trying to clean some things up. A lot of this is cleanup. Temporary model homes, we never really had good language for how we dealt with the parking for those. And most developers put a small parking lot in, and so we're just adding that language into our zoning ordinance to allow a small parking lot, and it can't interfere with the sidewalk, is essentially what we're trying to say. Waste containers, again, very odd. We have a section regarding parks and open space, and it says that your waste containers have to be screened, but it doesn't differentiate a trash can from a dumpster. So in theory, you could argue that we have to screen our trash cans in parks. We don't want to do that, so we're making that change. Next, section 4.17 here, residential districts. Or no, I'm sorry, skip one. 417, residential development of the project, right here, this language. Again, the white is existing. I'm a bit embarrassed that I've never noticed this before, but if you read that language, it actually says there's no minimum lot size required in the town of McCordsville. I have no clue how that language got into the original zoning ordinance. Obviously, it was a typo. And it was not, we've not caught it. We've never had the problem because everyone goes through a PUD and every PUD includes a minimum lot size. But this needs to be fixed because someday we probably will have a straight zone subdivision. And if we didn't fix this, we'd have a problem on our hands. So we're fixing that. The next one is similar, although not as impactful. For some odd reason, our initial zoning allowed front porches to extend into the front yard setback. Why we would do that, I have no clue. But that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the front yard setback. You don't want your home, whether it's a porch or a house or a garage or the living room, you don't want that in the front setback. So we're fixing that. Next is the anti-monotony. So this is what we discussed last month. If you remember right, we need to make a change to this. We've included this diagram, which I will make bigger when we actually adopt this. But essentially, this blue square is the subject lot, and the 2 on either side are number 1s, and 3 across the street are number 1s. In those situations, it cannot be the same model or any model elevation that the ARC has considered to be a like model. So I actually think this is more strict than what's in the ordinance today, because the ordinance does not deal with like models, it deals with the same.
Right.
So this is a very good cleanup that we're going to hopefully adopt and strengthen our anti-monotony. We've basically been doing it this way and have not been challenged, but this is cleaning that up to ensure that we don't get challenged on it. The rest of this is notice of violation things. So, and Greg, please jump in wherever, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of interpretation left to the administrative officer and how we issued notices of violations and how much time we gave for them to be abated. And what we're proposing is to create an absolute minimum of 15 days. So staff would still have the ability to extend that if they felt the circumstance warranted it. And we've all, I think everyone on this board has seen some of the more challenging code enforcement cases we've had over the years where we have given those extensions. But I really felt like a floor needed to be set, and that floor is 15 days. So if we issue a violation or notice of penalty, we have to give a minimum of 15 days. Any property owner that receives that letter is assured they have a minimum of 15 days before the next step occurs. So, we also cleaned up some things about how it's delivered. We're going to allow hand delivery via an affidavit if we need to. We do not want to hand deliver those things, but we have had situations where people make it very difficult to get them a certified letter. And so we need another option when we can't find somebody. Or I should have, we know where they're at. We can't get them to accept a certified letter. That's a better way of saying that. Yeah, yeah. Also, under legal action here, for some reason, we referred to enforcement action as referring it to the Plan Commission attorney. It really should be referred to the Board of Zoning Appeals attorney, because the Board of Zoning Appeals is going to be the body that handles any code enforcement cases that make it that far. It's never been a problem for us because our Plan Commission attorney is the same as our BZA attorney, but someday that could change. There's communities that do have different legal counsel, and so this really needs to state the Board of Zoning Appeals attorney. Lastly, before we get to Eric's stuff, adding 3 definitions. One of those will look pretty familiar, bargain retail. That was something we discussed a month or so ago with the Village of Brookside zoning amendment. Basically just restating that here, incorporating it into our zoning ordinance along with fast casual, which we have done in a few PUDs, and co-working space, which we've also done in a few PUDs. So we're proposing that those get added to our schedule of uses, and then this next paragraph here, Appendix A, is where they would be permitted. And so we are proposing, and we're open to discussion on this, that bargain retail is listed or is allowed only as a special exception in the commercial neighborhood, town center, and commercial regional zoning districts. That co-working space is a permitted use, so that's permitted by right, in office, commercial neighborhood, and town center, and special exceptions in Old Town and commercial regional. And finally, restaurant fast casual is a special exception in the commercial neighborhood and town center districts and permitted use in CR. And that one essentially mirrors fast casual with fast food. So it's basically the same in terms of where it's allowed. And that is it love to have any questions or comments on this before we dig into the fee stuff.
I have a few.
Yep.
Some of these might be just editorial. In the permit applications required, I'd like to add a number 9, fence permit. I think we ought to have a separate line for fences.
Yeah, I agreed.
And I had a question on the temporary structures. Is a construction trailer a temporary structure?
It is.
It just seems if you're building out a subdivision, like something, large like Hampton Walk, and they bring in a construction trailer, they're fairly expensive.
Yeah.
And they might have to leave it for 3 or 4 years. So would this accommodate that?
I don't think so unless, and I have to go back and look. I can't remember if we have a different timeline for construction trailers than other temporary structures. So as we're talking through, I'll look that up.
In the violations section, I think I'd defer to Greg on this, but abate and correct seem to be used interchangeably and back and forth, and their legal meanings may be somewhat different, as an abatement is just sort of a modification or a reduction in the level of offensiveness, whereas correction would seem to imply that it's completely removed. Greg?
Well, abatement and correction are used interchangeably in many codes. Abatement is just another term for bringing their property into compliance, and correction is quite actually the same thing. Usually abatement deals with perhaps a use as opposed to a structure or something of that nature. So I think that's why they're used interchangeably in that regard, to cover both of those types of violations.
And then I wondered on retail establishments, specific price point. I wonder if we ought to change $1 to $10 with inflation. Because will it be a $1 store anymore? They're going to be selling price points of $5 and $10 instead of $1.
Where's that at?
That's in the definition of retail bargain store. You have $1 and
And my only concern about that is, again, I think it says a few dollars, and that's, I don't know, it's hard to set.
it's more than $1 now.
But whether or not, I don't know, I wouldn't know how to talk about a few dollars. I don't know how we would ever deal with that. But
Well, I think $1 fine, just from the standpoint there are still these low cost, you could get these.
I think if we just set a specific low price point and didn't define it.
I'm open to that, yeah, whatever.
That way, anything they advertise that we think is low, it's within our purview to say that's a bargain store. Right?
yeah,
I mean, the point of that is to keep out
Yeah.
thrift shops and the Dollar General
Sure.
and certain.
The other option, yeah, the other option would be to take out the part about the dollar and just essentially make it secondhand if
Well, you've got secondhand there separately.
right.
Then on space for creative thought, knowledge, and ideas to be shared, could we just say meeting room?
Where at? I'm sorry.
The next paragraph, or the last paragraph on co-working space, it says they need a space for creative thought, knowledge, and ideas to be shared. You mean a meeting room, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's all.
So you say replace the second sentence there with just,
Just say meeting room. Set a space for creative thought, knowledge, and ideas to be shared.
My only concern is that if you simply say meeting room, they could use it for other purposes that you may not necessarily want to happen in these co-working spaces. I mean, I look at the problem we had with our meeting space here. We called a meeting room and we rented it out and we had all sorts of issues
Yeah.
and problems. So I think, and I'm not trying to disagree, Dr. Brady, I'm just saying, I think that specific is probably better than the general in that respect.
All right.
on the trailer question, Dr. Burney, Construction trailers are a different timeline. They are permitted as temporary structures only during times of construction activity. So if there's construction activity going on, we would allow that trailer to stay on that site. As soon as activity ceases, they would need to remove it. The one problem I see, I guess, would be a sales trailer. Hampton Walk may want their sales trailer, although you really hope that as soon as their model home is built, they get rid of that.
Yeah.
So 90 days, I think, is not terrible because the staff has the ability to prove an extension for 30. After that, if they're still out there selling and they don't have a model home, either they need to hurry up or they can come to the BZA and request an extension at that point.
Yeah, and sales trailers aren't necessarily objectionable. They're usually made to be quite attractive, as opposed to a construction trailer, which is towed in, plopped down, and propped up on concrete blocks.
I know you sent me an email with a lot of other comments. Did you want to go through those tonight or save those for?
Just before amending the zoning ordinance, I had one in particular that I wanted to get discussed and added to the zoning ordinance if possible. It's a fairly important one in that it allows an applicant to specify whether they want to install a gravity drainage sewer system or a low-pressure directionally drilled sewer system. If they choose the directionally drilled low-pressure sewer system, it's substantially less expensive to install. The difference between the two can be quite a bit per house, depending on linear footage, up to $10,000 per house less expensive. In the real world, if you look at the costs of lift stations in a relatively flat terrain like we have, and the great depth of the lift stations that we do have, and the 440 volt pumps that are down there, and the cost of maintaining and replacing those pumps, and the cost of paying for the electricity during peak demand hours, the costs of maintaining the two systems are similar. Water infiltration is similar. And just with the low pressure system, it shifts the burden onto the homeowner of having to have a grinder pump. But if the home has a basement, they'll have a grinder pump anyway, and the grinder pump can be installed in the basement. It doesn't necessarily have to be outside. So if there's a basement, they were going to have a grinder pump anyhow. The point is large amounts of money are being buried underground because of our preference for one particular type of sewer system. There's no way to harvest these tax dollars. They're not being put into improvements above grade, which go to our tax assessed value, not only for us, but for our school systems and our fire territory, and anybody else that's taxing the same citizens we are. If a developer experiences a low cost because we allow them to install a different type of sewer system, true, they would have to buy the grinder pump, and install it in the house, when they were building it. They might have that expense. But they would still save a lot of money. We can't tax them on that. We can't harvest those dollars. But we can ask them if they really want approval for their PUD or zoning change and want to install a low-pressure sewer system, want to go that way, and we choose to permit it, they're going to save a lot of money. And we can ask them to meet with a representative of the superintendent of schools, who can explain the needs that the schools have, or they can meet with Mark and he can explain the needs that the town has with regard to roads, in particular grade separation on the CSX tracks, and they can make a reasonable contribution that they can determine. Any contributions to a political subdivision are automatically 501c3 charitable contributions according to IRS code. So if we allow a developer to make this choice, we could substantially improve the financial situation of the town in regards to roads and or the school system. So I'd like to see an applicant be given a choice of which type of sewer system, rather than a mandate that it has to be gravity feed, since we're running both types of sewer systems in town anyhow, and both seem to work. So that's
I would have a concern with wording Dr. Burney to the point where they would be encouraged if we granted them permission on one way, preferred way over another.
It's voluntary, they have a choice.
Yeah,
They can choose gravity drain, or they can choose to.
but to tell them that they would be encouraged to go and donate those two, that is almost, to me,
No,
smells a quid pro quo.
It's an either or, and they can choose which way they want to go. They can do the math and they can make a decision. It's not a requirement.
I think we discussed this at the town council,
We
and it was
did.
brought up by Mark Witzman that the reason we are with the 8-inch gravity is for the low cost of maintenance it takes us. And if we start deviating from and allowing developers to put in different types of sewers, that it could eventually put a financial burden on the town in terms of the maintenance, especially with the grinder pumps.
Well, in
and
fact, I
gravity.
disagree with that, Greg. I think Mark is incorrect.
Okay, well, this is a discussion that should be at the town council level.
It was,
If this is something that you would like to have brought up, then I will put it on the agenda for the town council. But this is not a decision for the planning commission, since they do not have authority over the sewer. We are
Well,
also
this
sewer.
is an amendment to the zoning ordinance. We're doing zoning ordinance amendments, so it's proper to bring it here.
Well, I think my concern would be that we're talking about also would be changes to our sanitary sewer master plan.
Yes.
And the overall vision of development and growth and management of our utility. And so I do think it's more of a town council issue. If the town council wants to go down that route, then yes, certainly the zoning ordinance would be one of the documents that would have to be amended to incorporate the concept, but.
Well, this is what I call inertia. We've always done it this way, so we keep doing it this way. So we'll continue to bury millions of dollars underground that nobody gets any benefit from at all. Anybody else?
Again, we'll put it on the agenda for the town council to have that discussion.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anytime you can gravity drain sanitary, gravity drain sanitary, versus depending on pumps, so. Just move those.
Well, we pump all of our gravity drains anyhow. We have multiple lift stations, right?
Yeah, but not in your house.
Well, they're 440 volts and the town has the expense instead of the homeowner.
I was going to say, Dr. Bernie, I think there's good applications for a low-pressure sewer, and I think that it's been well looked at where those applications make sense. You see low-pressure sewers used in certain conditions, like around Geist. You see that application frequently where a gravity sewer is not an option. It just because you don't have the location of the home and the elevation of it, there's just no place to flow it, so you have to pump, and so you get applications like that. You also get applications where maybe you have a small neighborhood where it's existing, that it's less installation cost for disturbing, but it does not make sense when you're applying it to a larger development. If you've got a 400 home development, having a gravity sewer for that is very practical. Gravity's free. You let that water run downhill, and you pump it once when you get to your large lift station, and your economy of scale is a big advantage over 400 small pumps that are pumping. So I think
we can have the discussion. I've looked into it. I have a grinder pump in my own home. Personally, I think it makes a lot of sense to, try to harvest these dollars. And question for you, how deep is the 440 volt pump in front of McCoursville Elementary School? 35 feet down?
At the elementary school,
Yeah.
no, it's not that deep. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
What's the deepest one in our town?
The deepest one in our town is probably about, what was that?
Vineyard one?
I don't think so.
It was like 28, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think we've gotten, I think maybe Middle Fork is 32 or 33 feet, something like that.
So what's it cost to replace one of those puppies?
To replace a pump?
Yeah,
It varies on the size of the pump, but generally it's something between 10 and 17,000 maybe.
mhm.
Somewhere
What's
in
it
that
cost if a homeowner has to replace their grinder pump? What's the cost to the town?
To the town?
Yeah,
And it's $0. The homeowner would be replacing.
there you go.
Well, I disagree from this standpoint, and I'd like a legal opinion, and strictly from our legal counsel regarding the idea of if I'm a developer and I get to do give a cheaper option, I'm saving that money because it's profitable. I'm not going to turn around and go to all these other groups and say, hey, guess what? I saved a bunch of money from putting in sewer. Now I'd like to give it to you and write it off. They might, but the fact that we're trying to, as a town, say that is the preferred method, I don't believe we can do that.
Oh, no, it's an option. They get to choose. And if they don't want to give it, they don't have to. They have to have the discussion and understand the need. And if they want to pocket the whole amount, they can. If they want to be that way, I guess they could. We don't have any way we can tax it or otherwise get it. We're just burying it right now. And it's not going into homes. We're not getting any tax money for it. And in fact, I think it may be costing us money if you actually do the cost accounting here and add up all the electrical meters on all the separate lift stations. We're pumping a lot of sewage anyhow, and the town's bearing all the cost right now.
The town is not bearing the cost. The user is bearing the cost.
Well,
If I'm on the sewer, I'm paying a sewer rate each month. I am paying those costs. The town is not paying
okay,
them. The user. the
it's
end
just
user.
another cost
are you
for the
saying-
taxpayer. Say what it is.
So are you saying, I don't know about these sewer drains, but the gravity drain, I believe I heard Mark say, are mostly used in bigger neighborhood situations. There are outlier situations based upon the location
Retrofits usually.
that you do the pump.
Yeah, there's good applications for a low pressure. I disagree with Dr. Bernie to use it as just a general approach. For one thing, there's capacity limitations too. You get a certain number of homes connected into it, you can't connect more. There's a limit on how many you can connect in. So it just practically speaking, that's why you don't see them designed that way. Engineers will come up with solutions for problems, and sometimes they have to be innovative solutions. So there are approaches for low pressure systems, but they're limited on what works best.
So what you're saying makes sense to me. It also makes sense to me what Dr. Burney's saying is that taxing entities should be able to get taxes based upon the cost of what it cost. But I also agree with what Greg is saying is that if I'm living in a neighborhood and I got the discount because they had the gravity drain, I'm paying more for the sewer bill, so I'm paying for it as the homeowner.
I don't have replacement costs if my grinder pump goes down and those things. You know, if this.
So I'm better understanding. So that was my clarification.
And the town, obviously, since that feeds into our sanitary sewer system, if one of our sewer mains breaks, it is on us, but those fees are recaptured by the ratepayer, and it's, that's why
we pay more in rates, yeah.
But but it's the same thing as we're putting in when we put in a wastewater treatment plant, somebody's got to pay for it. It's not paid by the tax dollars, it's paid by user fees. There is no general fund to pay for our wastewater treatment plant.
That cost doesn't change. Your plant's still your plant.
Right.
That's the biggest cost.
Ryan, it sounds like this is a discussion that needs to be had at the council, and it wasn't presented to us prior to tonight. I knew nothing about this discussion prior to tonight. Did you need a specific action from this board on what you presented?
Yes, and we'd like to hear from Eric before we do that.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
That's why he sat here for 3 hours.
Fees look great. Just charge all the fees.
And actually, I have one more that I'll do after Eric. Sorry, it'll be fast. I know.
Is it
Eric,
septic in all houses?
no. Eric, take it away.
Wow, so I don't follow that. So we have two goals with updating our fee ordinance or fee schedule. One of those is to clarify them. Currently, it's really hard for a builder or homeowner to really know what, or even an inspector, honestly, to know what fees to charge what. As Ryan mentioned, they're outdated. Some of the things don't match up. As a building commissioner and a person who's worked in several building departments, that's one of the important things, is to have it all match up. So you can, when Allison gets a builder that calls and says, hey, how much is it going to cost for me to build IU Health, we should be able to give them an answer in a relatively short amount of time, not in a week with calculators. So the other thing would be, when I did this analysis, we are sort of off on a lot of our fees. As a matter of fact, when I started looking at some of the remodel fees for like commercial buildings, I actually went to Ryan and said, I think I don't know how to do math. I just want to make sure that we charge, like, this is all we charge. So there's a few things that we just need to increase to be in line with neighboring community, so that we can, so we're not missing out on fees, especially there are times where it would be cheaper for a commercial business like Al and I or the warehouse to remodel their building than it would be for you to remodel your house. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then of course we passed like the demolition ordinance last time. You saw me last year doing this stuff. And we don't have any fees for that, so it would be nice for them to pay a fee when they demo a building. So I can go through just the changes, if that's okay. And that would technically be, there's a comparison one, but there's another tab that says just changes. You want to just access that, it's fine. So basically, at the very top of that, I have single resident families, essentially increasing a base fee. The other thing, by the way, we had them switch, so you get a building permit and an improvement location permit, and then those go together. That goes under, we want to clarify some things. So you shouldn't get an improvement location permit for building a house. That's a building permit in every other jurisdiction. Improvement location permits are for putting a light post or maybe a fence or something like that. So some of these look big, like we would jump from a single family residence being $300 for a permit to $650, but that's including the improvement location permit fee in that. So you're only getting one. So it's not really a jump in the base, but we would charge 4 cents per square foot, and that brings us in line with other communities. We're still cheaper than some places on these, because we have to increase our fees by quite a bit to be in line with, say, Fisher's. But if you ever want the numbers on that, I can give them as well. With a little bit of stuff. And we'd be a little more expensive than something like New Pal, but their fee structure hasn't been updated for quite a while. I know, because they were there. Increasing, like I said, single residence to $650 base plus 4 cents a square foot. It makes sense. The bigger your house is, the more it costs to build, the more we have to inspect. 2 families and multifamily dwellings, just increasing it from $300 a unit to $350 a unit, in line where we need to be. Leaving really the additions, alterations, and remodels for single family houses the same, except for adding a square footage. So that way, if you're remodeling a 10,000 square foot house, it's not the same as remodeling my bathroom, frankly. Including, one thing that we didn't do very well before is make clear accessory building sheds, patios, and decks. There hasn't been a really consistent way to fees for that, or to charge fees for that, so we would essentially fee it based off of inspections that you would need. And so we would determine that up front, but it's pretty simple. You either need 1 through 4 inspections for adding a shed or a deck or something like that. Commercial is where you get the real changes. Currently, you would pay a $250 building permit fee in Portsville. I propose putting that to 25 cents per square foot with a minimum fee of being $700. That puts us in line with other neighborhoods. If you're altering or remodeling a commercial structure, starting with a base of $350 and adding 10 cents per square foot for the remodel. Addition to a commercial structure is essentially the same exact thing as building a new one, because there's no really difference there. Continuing on, one of the few fees that
Can I
are
stop
lower-
you with that? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You said it's the same, but commercial structure is $25 per square foot, and an addition is 20 cents. I'm sorry.
That's a typo.
This should be 25,
Yes.
so you're going to make them both 25?
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize on that.
When you said the same, I thought, no, they're not.
No, you're 100% right.
Okay,
I
no
apologize.
problem. Okay.
The one of the fees we'd lower would be to connect the spa or hot tub. We actually are really high on that. Someone getting a hot tub, for us, it takes a quick plan review of 10 minutes. It's not long. And then it takes one trip out there to inspect and make sure they're put together right. It's really an electrical inspection. So we've reduced that to $75 and again, put that in line with other communities and makes our citizens a lot happier because people get really mad when we charge them $250. Pool, basically keeping it in line, raising it just a little bit to keep for residential to $250. Commercial pool, it's actually really fairly cheap to build a commercial pool everywhere. I don't know why, but it is what it is, so I kind of left it the same. Demolition, we have no fees currently for that, so I just put a fee in there that's comparative to other neighboring jurisdictions for residential. A little more expensive for a commercial because it's a lot more intensive than just a residential. Simple as that. I'll continue, there's just a few more changes on here. The second page for me is increasing our reinspection fees and kind of changing a little bit. Right now, we have like a 4-stage reinspection process where it increases. I propose that just your first reinspection would be $100, your second $200, and then third and beyond goes up to $400. It simplifies things. If you failed 3 times in a row and I've specifically instructed you with the code and specific instructions on how to fix it, I don't know why I'm only charging you $200 at this point. You're just being obstinate. Believe it or not, that happens a lot, and it's shocking. And one of the things the builders have said to me is, well, if I fail once, it's $75. I mean, what do I care? Well, okay, but it's a lot of time out of our time, and we're actually quite busy. You guys are probably aware that we're building a lot here. Missed inspection fees, another one. What that is that you decide to build over something that you need it inspected. We have this quite often. You may cover the exterior of your home without getting that inspected. Right now, we charge $350, and we actually had to change that policy in a couple of neighborhoods because they were just paying the fees and not getting inspected. So I propose raising that to $500. Again, that's in line with most other jurisdictions, and there should be a stiff penalty for trying to cover inspection. If you have a violation, we make you take it off anyway, so it's a little bit different. But if we've already inspected and found a violation, that's a completely different thing. So just to clarify that. The only other changes on here, Ryan, you can speak to the technical review probably, but general site inspection, if you're just if you're going, we get commercial inspections a lot where they just want to request a random inspection. That's not on your normal list. It's not already billed through building permit. I propose just increasing that to $100 because sometimes they just want to use us as separate counselors for how to build a building instead of reading the code themselves or paying their architect. We should be paid for that time because we're a line item on the town's budget. What else? Again, re-inspections are pretty, I've already gone over them, I only got on here twice. Changing in use right now, a change in use is simply, I don't know, we just have this over here, one of the strip mall places changes over from one business to another. Technically by code and law, you're supposed to get a permit for that. But then when you get a permit for that, there's really confusing in our ordinances of like, is there a fee? There should be because we have to inspect it. You can't, a lot of times when you get a change in use, we actually have to start from scratch and make you file for the state because you can't change. If you change too much in what the building is used for, you have to follow the newer code kind of process. So just increasing that to $100 because we don't really have that now. I know that's a confusing thing. Anyways, we also want to increase the fences from $10 to $40 because $10 is really underpriced, even new pals. And then the erosion control fee, actually increasing that. We charge $35 right now. That's really low, and that's something that we keep running into. It's also Nick Brown from our office could probably speak more to that, but they're actually required by other bodies to keep their erosion control up. If we're continuously inspecting and writing it, it'd be nicer to have an initial upfront fee for us to be able to inspect that.
Can I go back and ask a question? You have a certificate of occupancy, $100, and then, but that's not the change of use. Then the second one is the change of use.
Sorry.
They're separate?
Oh yeah, there are two different things.
So they would be charged both?
That's in building code. But
So they would be charged both?
It's one or the other. So
Okay.
it just keeps you in line with building code.
Okay, that's fine.
You wouldn't want to say something's a change of use if it's a change of occupancy. I
Okay.
don't want to say it's
Mhm.
really boring, honestly. I'm in that field, so I have to know that. Those are the really brief rundown changes.
On the cover-up fee, $350, just curious, so, I mean, obviously we do that, I don't do that, I don't wanna do that. We were saying like you do with a sanitary, and they just cover it up, and then you didn't test it, and then
So-
they dig it back up, or you say they pay $350 and then move on?
No, so that wouldn't really apply for sanitary, but
Okay.
for most of the time, like the best example is that exterior house we see where,
Like doing a sheathing inspection or
yeah,
something
they'll-
like that?
instead of inspecting the sheathing or the window flashing and all
Yeah.
that fun stuff, they'll
Like-
cover it.
You
And
make them pull it off, or just say they can?
usually we make them pull it off and
Okay.
we charge them a fee because
Okay,
it's
good.
kind of like you're building 300 homes, you don't wanna have to keep
And that's the
going.
right thing to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that would encourage to do that, just as
Yeah. One of the things I
everybody will
like
try
about
to
working
get
for
away with
Ryan
everything
is,
they can feel. They get inside of a city and they start sensing how the inspectors
Yeah.
are and watch people
Yeah.
do that program. So I would just be as harsh as I possibly could be. I mean,
No,
and not feel bad about it.
I
at
agree,
all.
that's one of the reasons I came to work here.
Okay.
As Brian said, he would back me on stuff like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
the other place that wanted to hire me said, we don't want you writing fees. So I didn't go there, came here.
Yeah, I mean,
Because of that.
it's a practice by the tip. I mean, you just gotta give them in mind, so.
Yeah.
We tend to take a pretty hardline approach with contractors and builders.
Yeah.
We will tend to be a little bit more lenient with a homeowner doing a
sure.
project, right?
For sure.
So
Yeah.
that person, we might not fee them, but we are gonna make them
Yeah,
pull off and show us
build
that
it,
they
yeah,
did
you
it
have
correct.
to.
Yeah.
No, that's one to encourage that, because I'm watching that from my perspective, and I know people, I hear art guys, like, I know they can walk over to the inspector, you know what I mean, and like, oh, that's not good, future problems, so it's just better for everybody if the inspectors have the authority, are backed up, and are really rigorous about these reporting. I think that's right. thing to do.
No, I'm glad you said that. That actually is one of the reasons why I like working here is because we actually get to have authorities. And honestly, I hear from builders all the time, it's not easy to build in McCoursville, and that's actually
Okay.
good.
It's
I mean,
safe.
some of the things I've found literally just today were ridiculous.
No, it's getting worse,
Oh, yeah.
way worse, so.
When we told McCourt Square they had to pull their their drainage line out and fix the slope,
Yeah,
they were quite shocked. But we were, of course, knee deep in the mud, checking the slope all the way through.
yeah, don't.
We don't want to tear that up later.
No. Please, no, that's
It is
terrible.
shocking.
It's horrible for everybody to fix.
So to wrap that up, or wrap up this discussion on the fees, we're not trying to just raise fees to raise fees or to gouge anyone, but the point is, all of these things that we do cost us money, they cost the towns money, and we need to be able to keep up with providing these services, and over time, in order to do that, fees need to be raised. So that's why we're proposing it, and we're happy to answer any questions on that. The last thing that I have for you is an optional update. If you remember, actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't the plan commission, it was the town council. I can't see very well. A gentleman came, I think it was in August, to the town council and requested or suggested that we look at amending our ordinance regarding solar panels. So we've had an ordinance on solar panels since probably 17 or 18. I don't remember when we did this for sure. It essentially, in short, says you can do them, and if you do them on the back of a home where it's not visible to the street, it's a permit. You follow a few rules, and we move on our business. If they're going to be visible or on the front elevation, front roof plane, then you need a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that process has worked just fine, but it has resulted in a lot of people coming forward, as Brianne can attest, to the BZA seeking those variances because depending on which way your house faces, you really need that southern exposure, I believe it is, in order to get the proper daylight to make the panels worthwhile for you to pencil out, however you want to say that. So the BZA over the last 4 or 5 years has approved a great number of them. They've approved all of them to date. So frankly, when he came and spoke, it made me a little uncomfortable because it makes me a little bit nervous to have solar panels just allowed by right on the front sides of homes. But what we have drafted here is, as an option for you, is exactly that, to allow them. The thing that we've added to it, which I do think helps, is if it's going to be visible or on the front facade, front roof plane of a home, it has to be symmetrical. So in other words, You can't have 5 panels and it's like a weird polygon shaped thing, because I think that's what tends to look the worst visually. And so what we're saying, from the back of your house, we don't care what you've got. You can scatter them across your roof. But if it's gonna be on the front, it needs to be a 4-sided shape, square, rectangle. Those are pretty much your options, 4-sided, but that's what it is. And so that's what this language essentially says is it's gotta be matte black. Every component has to be matte black. And if you're gonna put it on the front, it has to be a 4-sided shape. So staff's kind of neutral on this particular amendment. We wanted to provide it to you as an optional thing. If you guys like it and we want to include it, we can. If you say don't worry about it, we'll just trash it.
Would we also delineate like that height?
Yes,
off of,
6
okay.
inches. And it says I know it's hard to read this, but
I can't see it.
it's 6 inches and it's parallel to the roof plane.
So just same as what we do every
Yep.
BZA. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
And one of the Tesla roofs that would just, like the roof touch, I mean, that would be, would that consider this?
I don't think it would be.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just
those look like tiles to
shingles,
me.
right?
Yeah. If anything, we probably need to just add that as a permitted roof material,
Yeah.
which we would need to do in a separate thing sometime. We could do that. We've not had anyone propose that yet, but those look far better than
They're
the
so
panels.
expensive,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Is there a link to that language on the, that we can pull up on our tablets here? 'Cause I can't
This-
read that up there.
I'm sorry. No, I do not have it linked out. I can certainly bring this back in the future if you'd like some more time to review it.
What do they do with commercial solar? Is that different?
Yeah, it is. It's this top 5 numbers right here. So they have to be roof mounted. They are only permitted on a flat roof. They must be completely screened by a parapet wall. And all their components shall not be visible from another property or street. Panels shall be designed and installed to allow proper access to and around the roof structure for emergency personnel. And then finally, panels, components, and equipment shall be matte black. So that's commercial, that first set up there. And then the second set, 1 through 9, would be applicable to residential, which says basically the same thing, except that obviously it allows it on pitched roofs. Obviously, it's not screened by a parapet wall. And it addresses whether it's visible from the street or not. If it's not visible from the street, you can do it with a permit. It does not have to be symmetrical. Then basically everything else is the same. If it's on the front, the only change is it has to be a symmetrical shape or 4-sided shape.
So
Makes sense.
if we allow this, but the HOAs have in their covenants, who wins on this one?
Well, that goes to court if the HOA is willing to take that homeowner to court.
Technically, the HOA would lose because it's federal, so.
There are some federal laws about that now, and I'm not the.
I mean, I know our HOA was one of them that changed their covenants
Yeah.
because of this issue. But my question is, if this gets changed on the town ordinance side and an HOA, we've got several in the town that have their covenants prior to this change that were probably written,
So we included this highlighted language that I'll read because I know it's hard to see. Solar panels are subject to private restrictions, i.e. HOA covenants. However, the town's permit process will not include such reviews. Any enforcement of private restrictions shall be the responsibility of the applicable private parties.
all right.
That was our attempt to cover ourselves because we don't want to get in a fight between an HOA. We had a discussion at BZA with one of our items, got a little messy because there was some folks that didn't like it and not an overly strong HOA, I guess I would say. And it was a little unclear if the whole HOA was against a particular solar panel project. It was messy. But I think that describes why we don't want to get in the middle of that, because not all HOAs are created equal. Some do a really good job of administering their own rules. Some do less than a great job. And some overstep their bounds. And we don't want to be caught in either of those scenarios. So we follow our process of procedures. If it's allowed by town code, we issue a permit, whether it's allowed by the HOA or not. And we'll tell that person, hey, we don't think your HOA allows this. You probably shouldn't do it. But we will still issue that permit, because if we don't, we then could potentially be liable to be sued because we didn't follow our own ordinances. So, yeah, that doesn't work out well really for anybody, but there's not much, I don't think, pending Greg's different opinion, that we can do on that.
No.
What did the county wind up doing with this?
I don't
They haven't
know,
done anything yet.
actually.
They still have it
They haven't done
tabled?
anything yet. Yeah.
How about commercial solar farms, like if Nine Star wanted to put, an acre of solar panels up somewhere?
We have not addressed that, other than just to only allow them on a roof. So someday, if someone proposes something like that, we're going to have to develop standards for it and determine what we want to do with a solar farm. We have not gone through that exercise yet. Certainly can. As the airport continues to expand, there may become properties that become viable uses for solar farms because they can't be used for much else depending upon airplane patterns. So that day could come for.
Well, the airport will probably be about it sometime, but that's not ours, I guess. Question for Eric. On the site, on the inspections, I'm looking at a re-inspection that's 7,500, 200, 400, and then I'm looking at a first instance failed inspection or re-inspection of the same violation. Are those different?
So no, that will be combined in the eventual ordinance. So like on my copy of the actual ordinance, that's not just the changes, those are combined together.
I see. Okay. I really like the square footage. It's a more complicated inspection. If it's a larger building, takes more time, more to look at. Makes sense to scale it like that.
Yeah, I mean, a great example would be the Drees homes over here at Vintners Park. Honestly, we've changed how we schedule rough-ins and finals over there to give us more time, because it's not like going over to Weaver's Landing and doing this.
Yeah, some of the stuff in Rockport, I think, is 2,000 square feet, and others of it is 5,500.
Yeah, it's quite different.
Big difference.
Yeah, Ryan, one of the things to consider on the solar, I don't know if it addresses it or even matters, but one thing to consider is on the commercial ones that, maybe addressed or not, but how that people, they lease their roofs, and they sub people will lease their roofs, they sub out the solar installation to somebody else, it's a different owner of the solar thing than the building. So just when you're permitting, I mean, you're not gonna have that too often.
You need a
but
property owner consent at that point.
something like that, and how you enforce it, if there's something happening, if you're contemplating it, you may just wanna you have this idea that there could be a ground lease, there could be something.
That's interesting. I've not heard of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Something to think about on our permit process then. Okay.
Yeah, you want enforcement that you may not have any lien rights, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the next level of thinking, I just know it's an issue that's proud to come, because they're 20-year deals.
Yep.
That a lot of stuff happens in 20 years, and you got this thing, somebody doesn't own it on a building they don't control.
My initial reaction is, and I should think about it more before this is initial reaction, is how we deal with a lot of things when you have tenants or leases is we're gonna, if someone other than the property owner is applying for a permit, we're gonna ask them for a property owner consent form and get that signed by that property owner. Because then if we have a problem with whoever the leasee is, doesn't matter. We always will go back to the property owner. It's your property.
Right.
Here's the problem.
They're getting compensated for it. So
Yeah.
That's true. Same thing.
Ryan, did you need something from us?
So first of all, we need to open a public hearing on the zoning ordinance amendments. Mr. Price may have comments to make. Close the public hearing, and then if you're prepared to move forward with the zoning ordinance amendments as proposed with or without the solar, then that'd be fantastic, and we would need a recommendation.
Before we open up to the public, do we have any more questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to suspend the Plan Commission meeting and open it up to the public.
So moved.
There's a first, do I have a second? There's a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Price?
I move we close the public hearing and resume the Plan Commission
Second.
meeting.
There's a first and a second to close the public hearing, resume the Plan Commission meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any other discussions on the matter tonight that Ryan has presented, Ryan and staff have presented?
Dr. Burney, do you want to wait on the solar until you can do more research, or?
Oh, I think I'm okay with the solar. I'm just wondering how we would phrase a motion. Maybe Greg can. We've got a lot of stuff here. We've got fees, and we've got maybe some editorial changes in the amendments that Ryan brought forth, and I don't know we have any substantive changes, do we?
I think maybe pending opinions, recommendation, favorable recommendation.
And we'd be
as discussed.
we'd be recommending to the town council.
Yes.
I'll make a favorable recommendation to the town zoning and ordinance, including the solar panels and pending any editorial changes as discussed tonight.
And the fee changes.
And the fee changes.
There is a motion Brianna's made of approval.
Favorable recommendation.
Favorable recommendation to the council. Do I have a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Two very, very quick things, and I promise we're done after that. I asked Eric, in addition to being here, obviously, for the fees, to kind of just talk about, 2 minutes or less, about sort of an average day, and use today as an example of the level of enforcement that has to happen by him and his staff on a daily basis, because I think it's really telling as to why we have inspections and why we do this and why we're a pain in the butt, according to some people. If you could kind of tell us about your day-to-day, just quickly, and give some examples of the things that you catch and enforce on a daily basis.
Sure. So this morning I started out with 2 final inspections on some houses in nice Vintners Park. One of them had failed its original final because it had an active leak when my inspector went in. If you ever meet her, her name's Katie, she's awesome. She went in to do a final inspection the last time we were in the house before they turned over the homeowner. And there was an active leak from the main floor into the basement, water everywhere. We always ask the builders, have you walked your house before we come? And they said, yes. So that failed. So we did the re-inspections on a couple houses. They actually passed and fixed it. Cost a lot of money to replace drywall, carpet, and other things. They're nice houses up there. So then we went to Mornings over here, which is the new, it replaced Chicago's. It's not open yet because they failed their fire alarm test for the 3rd time in a row, which is a completely testable thing. We also went and met with the local fire marshal there as well from Vernon Township. We have to do those tests together. Hopefully they'll pass tomorrow and open so we can eat some wonderful breakfast food. Then we went to police station, and we found several, it was awesome, actually, great plumbing. There's a lot of plumbing in the police station, plenty of wonderful bathroom facilities one day, but they were actually surprised. We caught small sections of pipe that the slope, so that everything rolls downhill. I'm sure you've heard that expression. The slope went the other way on 2 sections of pipe that were this long. Everything else is perfect, but the problem is that can cause quite a bit of an issue later. Haven't fixed that, and because they fixed it as a middle section, I know what they did, it doesn't really, if you want to ever know. We hadn't fixed it, and then we checked the rest of the section again and found another section because they fixed over here. And the plumbers are newer guys. They actually were like, I can't believe you checked all this, but I'm really glad you did. Yeah, me too. And then we went to McCord Square and actually managed to pass some inspections today. We're really excited about that. It's been a minute. So that was a pretty busy day, just in the morning and early afternoon. And then as a commissioner, I've got a lot of other things I do. So when we came out here, I got back and then found out that there was a quite sizable commercial site starting to do footings without calling any inspections in them, which is where the whole building sits on, if you're not familiar with the building. And we went out there and caught them in the act. And they said they didn't know that they needed to call in inspections. We have a pre-construction meeting for every,
Everyone has a footing
literally
inspection.
every job.
Every community has a footing inspection.
Unless it's a small basement, which, I mean, we still talk to the homeowners then and help them figure out how to do the basement. But yes, we do a pre-construction meeting. We're having a second one because it's a sizable commercial project. And so that was my inspection day today, just today.
Were they putting it in right? Were they putting the footer in right, correctly?
You know what, yeah, they were, so that was good. It was a
Well,
small
I
section,
just
so
didn't
it
know.
was 11 feet wide by 37 feet long,
Yeah, right.
30 feet deep, all concrete, a lot of stuff there. I did forget, so we did fail one room at McCord Square because, again, it had been walked. And when we walked in, there was standing water throughout the room on the 4th floor. The suggestion from the builder was somebody may have spilled a water bottle or used it as a restroom. And I said, there's literally standing water. We wear boots, you know. And so I don't think it was that. You need to find out where the leak's coming from. Sure enough, he went up to the roof and found out there were no boots on any of the plumbing penetrations, and so it had been raining in for several days because it didn't rain today. So it's been there. So now I have to dry it all out. And I'm really mean, can you tell? But we always provide them the codes and the things that say they have to do that. So that was my first or the day today. Is that good?
I don't
It's
envy
not
you.
an uncommon day, unfortunately.
I never post the pictures I take in McCordsville on Facebook. I only use them for internal training purposes only. If you ever want to see some funny pictures, I can show them to you.
Last item, the November Plan Commission is currently scheduled for November 21st, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I don't know if that's a conflict for anyone else. It is a conflict for me. I'm actually out of town that whole week. So we talked with ARC earlier tonight. They decided to move their meeting to the Tuesday after. You do not have to do that, but I wanted to give Plan Commission the opportunity to think about whether they want a Plan Commission meeting the same week as Thanksgiving.
What kind of,
That's the 28th then.
I could not do the 28th, but
Well-
that's just me.
what are you anticipating our agenda look like at this time?
It's dangerous to say, but as of right now, it does not look bad. I can see a development plan or two on it. I don't think there would be any rezone items, so no big, large hearings that I can think of.
Might be a good opportunity for your, for Ethan to have, run a meeting.
Hey, let's go. That's what happened. If you keep the 21st, it's fine.
I'm still good with the 21st.
I
I'll
am
come in and
too.
badger him some,
I'm
yeah,
fine.
absolutely.
All right.
It could be good experience.
I can't do the 28th, so I'd rather stay on.
Yeah, I'd rather stay on the 21st.
Okay, we'll keep the 21st.
It seems like you're the only one that can't be here, so I think
We don't need you.
we don't need you.
Oh, yeah.
You could participate remotely.
I
Yeah.
could. I could. But I'll be on the beach.
Be the first remote chair.
With a cocktail and.
Well, maybe.
And a 4-year-old, whatever, yeah.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
No other new business announcements? I would entertain a motion of adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
There's a motion, there's a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.